call this Coventry Town Council meeting to order on Monday, June 1st, 2020 at 7:35 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For all.
All right. And then John or Amanda, who has the audience of citizens letters?
Excuse me, Julie.
Yep.
Could you go through a roll call, please, and let me know if they're remote or at annex?
Okay. Julie Blanchard, present in the annex.
Lisa Thomas, present in the annex.
Matt Senior. Matt Senior is muted and he's coming remotely through Zoom. Matt Junior.
The junior is remote.
Richard Williams.
I am remote.
John Hand.
John Hand is zooming in from home.
Yvonne, at this time, Lisa Conant has not signed on.
Julie,
Okay.
Yep.
is Amanda 498-3220? Who's that?
I think that's the conference room. Or
Okay.
The annex here.
Okay.
And we have our town manager, John Elsesser, in the room, and Amanda Backhouse, our finance director, present in the annex with us. Okay? And John, I'd like these letters, we'd love to see it kept to half an hour and kept to audience comments, not budget comments, that were to be submitted by May 29th. If
You want me to go through those? First one's budget. I know that one came directly to me.
budget comments based on our,
And the first one are from the Library Association?
That was budget.
Yeah. So to members of Coventry Town Council, this actually came in after last meeting, so it's not timely in a sense.
right.
But
So
if I could summarize it, it was from the Connecticut Library Association asking the council not to reduce the...
Isn't that attached to our agenda?
It was
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
submitted last time, so
Yeah,
it's
it's on
just a
our
summary.
agenda tonight.
Can you just explain what, you are not reading letters that were submitted? Because there were like 6 of them that are attached to me.
Tonight's audience is our regular audience of citizens.
Not
but
budget.
Budget
You
was
got these.
supposed to be submitted to budget comments, which we all got. Every council member got
And
the
they will be
budget
attached to
comments.
the minutes of the meeting.
I think people misunderstood that.
We're doing audience to citizen letters, and this is a stack of just audience to citizens.
No, that's budget and audience.
No.
Laura
So
wanted
what
both
else?
of them for attachment to the agenda. You had her get both of them. So I can go through them and tell you which ones are audience if you'd like.
Yeah,
Oh, this one's labeled as audience.
I don't think people understood that if they sent a
I
letter.
put that in my background memo to the council, just to be clear.
right.
Yeah, but the rest of the public doesn't see your background memo. I don't know that I don't know that citizens understood that if they wrote a letter to budget, that it wouldn't get shared.
It was shared to everybody.
And it
No,
will
no,
be attached to
You are
tonight's
cutting me
minutes.
off. I don't know if they
In
understood
that
it wouldn't
part,
be
I think
shared
Marie's
during
is
audiences.
just for input for the council.
I
Those
just want to
letters are
finish
for
my
input for the council
sentence.
deliberation.
I just want to finish my sentence. I don't know if it was understood that that input wouldn't be shared during audience of citizens, because what I noticed in some of the communications last time was people were submitting to audience of citizens and then also submitted to budget because they weren't sure. I think there was confusion around that, and I think people who submitted to budget felt that it was the same thing as submitting to audiences as citizens. I'm not trying to be a pain in the neck. I just think, based on what I saw even in the community, that
So I'm
I was like
back,
understanding.
just
I don't know.
for
I don't know
my
what's
background
coming.
memo, we do have to have this meeting tonight.
Right.
Yep.
I
So
only
choose
see-
what you want to do, because now we are
So what came to us and is attached to the agenda, is it more than just those 5 or 6? Is there more than that?
It's a lot less than last time.
Oh,
Some
so
of those are
maybe
budget
there's-
only. That's anything that came in
Right.
since the last meeting to budget and to audience. There were some that only went to budget. There were some that went to both audience and budget. There were some that only went to audience. So that pile that Julie has is a mix of all.
Yeah.
Oh, I
All
don't know
right,
what you
well,
want
let me
do
just
then.
try to get through these, what I have.
It is a much smaller pile than this.
Yep.
Significantly smaller.
Okay, first one I
John
have.
Hand has had his hand up
Yes,
for a long
I'm sorry.
time.
Go ahead, John Handon. Thank you, Matt Senior.
No, that's okay. I understand. Trying to do a lot of things. So John Hand would just like to voice his support for. Let's just see if we can get through the pile. It doesn't look like you have it in your hand, so you really know how many. But
Yeah.
if it's doable, let's do it and
Yeah.
move on.
Okay, thank you.
So the resolution is very clear that budget comments are to come to the council by May 29th to be considered in our budget deliberations. I think it's improper to have additional letters brought in through another avenue, which isn't even part of our resolution or part of the process. And this is a formal budget process that we approved unanimously. So I think we should stick with the process, and that should be the end of it. Let's just move on.
And you all got the
Read the audience of
budget
citizens,
comments.
just the audience of citizens letters.
Yeah, all right, you ready? I have Tom and Jan Weston, 158 BB Farms Road, to our town council. They sent an email to the town council for the May 18th meeting. They feel compelled to write again and thank you for taking town residents' comments to heart and coming up with a budget that we feel does an excellent job. Everything is probably going to be about the budget. We also agree that tweaking the collection percentage down a smidge makes very good sense and may hopefully help to create a surplus that can go back into the fund balance. Budget is crafted so well that folks should feel comfortable with its adoption without a vote. The next email was addressed to budget comments, so every council member should have received it and read it. The next one I have is addressed to budget comments. Every council member should have gotten it and received it and read it. Budget comments. All right, this one doesn't say budget comments, but it's about the budget. Matt Twerdy, I'm sending this email supporting the Board of Ed budget with no further cuts in the existing Coventry budget proposal. Budget comments from the Chipkin, from Robert Chipkin. Budget comments, John Fleming. Budget comments, Laura Twerdy. Budget comments from Claire and John Twerdy. Budget comments from Laura Twerdy again. This is addressed again to budget comments. So these will all be attached to our minutes of tonight's meeting, and we have all received them. Budget comments from Chris Morgan received, Coventry audience. From Chris Morgan received today, Monday, June 1st. But he again speaks about the budget.
Julie,
Yes,
if it's still about the budget, then those are budget comments. The instructions were pretty clear to everyone who's eligible to vote in a referendum for the budget, that if they had comments related to the budget, they were to go to that special site, be received, and delivered by May 29th.
yep.
So I don't think it'd just be randomly picking other people's comments and just reading them.
Well, he did
If they're
email
on our
me.
previous meeting improper, they're improper, that's all.
Right. So, but
If
Chris,
they don't follow the procedure, then they're not part of the process.
He followed the regular audience of
Right.
citizens
So,
process.
I have one here that's addressed to the Coventry audience for tonight by Chris Morgan. It's a little lengthy.
Read it.
You ready? As the council presses forward with the budget, I'm writing again to express 2 major points. The first is that the budget the council is presenting has not gone anywhere near far enough in reducing the amount of costs that will be passed on to the taxpayer. The country faces a massive economic hurdle. It is now more important than ever in our lifetimes to give people the control to make their own decisions with their money. No council, panel, board, or bureaucrat knows what the individual families in our community face, and how and where their money goes needs to be their choice. The method by which we collect taxes at town level is about as regressive as it comes. This means the impact will unquestionably be shouldered harder by those that even in the best of time can least afford it, not to mention how that impact will be felt during these uncertain times. The taxpayer is already having to make hard choices. There is no excuse that the town should further that burden. If the people have to tighten the belt, the town does too, and significantly so. Allow voluntary human action to support things where those that can want to, but do not use the force of government to extort them. The second issue is the process. The people of Coventry, regardless of whether or not they share my views on the contents of the budget, are to be respected in their constitutionally protected right to their voice in its enacting. The town council absolutely must adhere to the state constitution and town charter and allow the people a vote. There is no grounds that the governor can supersede these protected rights by unilateral executive privilege. Home rule is protected in the state of Connecticut, and the Crown, whether Lamont likes it or not, does not have authority to strip this from us. As restrictions on operating ease across the state, we learn more and more about the virus that has led us down this path. It defies all logic and reason to think we cannot carry this out safely. Arguments to the contrary are nothing more than being willfully obtuse or worse, divisive in an attempt to restrict and control the people. The council has claimed many times for years, Democrat-led or Republican, to stand for transparency. Passing this without a vote is spit in the eye of all that believed you. Other towns have stood up, said that these unconstitutional orders will not be followed, and taken the steps to protect the people's rights. Coventry's town council needs to find the courage to do the same. Every member of this council swore an oath to the citizens to work for us and to protect our rights. The charter and the Constitution afford us this voice. If any members of the council do not wish to uphold their oath, they are of course free to resign their position, but to continue forward is a violation of that oath. It is disrespectful to the people you represent and an abomination to the founding principles of our state, our country, and the trust that needs to exist for government to operate. If the council is still bent on moving forward with this, you owe the people an explanation. Every member of this council needs to go on record as to how this is in line with their oath and the constitutional issue it creates. No hiding. If you wish to strip the rights of the people, if you think that you have the power to do so, you owe the citizens a clear explanation of how you rationalize that decision. In my last email, I asked the council to make a motion to have adequate discussion and vote on record about the validity of their ability to move forward on this. I repeat this call again. Government exists to protect the rights of and serve the people. It is not the other way around. The town has obligations to its citizens. Respect that duty. Budget comments.
Madam Chair, respectfully, this is not in accordance with the resolution that we have in place, and I object.
Madam Chair, John Hand would just like to note that you just read probably the longest letter we'll receive. And now, so you know you've set the precedent that Matt was trying to enforce. You've set the precedent that I think we should read all the letters now.
We're reading the letters from the audience comments. Audience. Next comment from addressed to the audience is Jason Blakesley. He lives at 27 Berry Avenue. I was completely disgusted after watching a white police officer kneel on the neck of a black man for nearly 10 minutes, ultimately causing his death. Just as troubling, 3 officers sat by silent. This type of behavior is eerily similar to our town council members remaining silent after learning about Mike Hicks' inappropriate comments to an innocent 15-year-old girl. Just as concerning was that Councilwoman Thomas appeared annoyed last meeting that
You
2
can't come in
letters
here.
from my wife.
There's less than 10 people here.
No, the meetings are closed to the public.
The meeting may be closed to the public. The audience of citizens is for people that have their voice.
All right, call in, please.
For you guys to silence them like that is wrong. Those people vote because they care about this town.
And we all
I appreciate you reading my
please
letter,
get out,
but you
Mr.
owe it
Morgan.
to everybody to read all the rest of them. I'll leave. But that's wrong and you know it. Stop hiding behind this. You said transparency, give the people transparency.
All right.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
that's
this
twice
is John,
now
assessor at
that
the
our
annex.
organist
Chris
had to have
Morgan
his voice heard
was
at
in
the meeting.
the annex and was refusing to leave.
The other letters
He has
that you
just
read,
left.
All right.
in the interest of fairness to the other residents.
I think somebody should come up to make sure he is. It's not not an emergency. Thank you.
All right, so back to Jason Blakesley's letter. Just as concerning was that Councilwoman Thomas appeared annoyed last meeting that 2 letters from my wife and me were not related to the budget. Apparently, speaking up for women that are victims seems to annoy a particular council member. If speaking up for victims bothers you, good, I'll speak. You can still speak up. It's been 8 months and cost the taxpayers $70,000 to investigate Mike Hicks by Jason Blakesley. And I have a letter here from Jennifer Burdette.
That came to his audience
As
as
audience.
citizens this evening. Yes, that was the last one we received.
All right. Dear Town Council members, the tragic death of George Floyd at the hands of a murderous police officer and the following demonstrations have showed us American citizens demand accountability for police actions. We have all watched videos of horrific scenes of violence and situations escalating way out of control. Despite our various strong opinions and emotions about these situations, we have all been witness to the anger across the United States. The citizens are calling for police abuse to stop. The citizens of the United States are calling for swift investigations and disciplines of those who don't deserve to wear the badge. Citizens are asking towns and police chiefs to stand tall and brave against the police unions and their protections of abusive officers. Predators, rapists, and sadistic individuals exist among us in every faction of society. The ones who find a way to slip into positions of law enforcement officers need to be weeded out, and the fear must stop. I remind the Town Council of Officer Michael Hicks' racist statements in the New York Times. Quote, I definitely notice that now more people I pull over, if they're black, they're right away turn on the lights and put their hands on the wheel, close quotes. Sergeant Hicks says, quotations, I like that, it makes me feel safe, close quotes. Why was Officer Hicks allowed to make those statements without discipline as he represented the Coventry Police Department? Everyone should feel safe driving through Coventry, not just white men. Hicks' statement clearly demonstrates his bias. The Town Council, did you know Officer Hicks is a known liar to the Coventry Police? He was spoken to at length about his failure to tell the truth. He felt at liberty to lie about removing a weapon without permission from the armory and lie about carrying live ammunition without permission, amongst other lies he was caught in. He lied about what people told him and what permissions he had. Chief Bo Thurnauer warned him explicitly, I expect honesty and integrity in every action and activity performed as a representative of the Coventry Police Department. This includes contacts with the public as well as situations that may take you away from the town. Any indication that you have strayed from this policy in any way will result in discipline and/or dismissal. Please keep this in mind as you proceed in your career. These ethical values should be pervasive not only in your on-duty activities but when you are away from policing. Officer Hicks did not listen to Chief Thurnauer's advice apparently. Officer Hicks is a liar and a predator. He chased around my 15-year-old daughter while he was on duty and intimidated her with his authority and groomed her to have sex with him. Pressured her to meet him when he was on duty in the dark at the Coventry town line when she was 15 years old. He pressured her for inappropriate photos constantly. My daughter was only 15 and she had to live with her constant fears that a police officer was stalking her and sexually harassing her. She had to live with the constant fear of what would happen to her or her family if she did not comply. She had to live with the constant fear of how to refuse to do these things without anything bad happening to her or anyone she loved. She was 15 years old, minding her own business in her own home when Officer Michael Hicks began his pursuit. Just as shocking as that his own father, Kenny Hicks, well known across Coventry and a long-term fire department member, told Amber she is a dream girl that any guy would do anything to be with and she should remember that in a positive light, and he was acting out a fantasy at the time. Well, Coventry having a police officer while on duty acts out a fantasy of chasing around underage girls for sexual relations and photos and trying to meet them is frightening. Chief Palmer today informed me the internal investigation is still ongoing. I won't let this be swept under the police department rug. I will continue to cooperate with the state police, CALEA, any attorney Coventry sends my way, the federal special agent working on this case, and the media. My daughter matters. What Officer Hicks did to her and tried to do to her matters. If my daughter is brave enough to come forward and we are both brave enough to expose ourselves to the world and the dangers that go with it, be brave enough, Coventry, to do the right thing. Free Coventry youth from a known predator, Fire Officer Hicks, Jennifer Burdett. And then all the budget comments every council member has received, and they will be attached to tonight's minutes. Hi, Lisa Conant. Yvonne, Lisa Conant has joined our meeting now. All right.
Thank you.
Keep these, John, for Laura.
I
Or...
think Lisa's raising her first.
Yes, Lisa.
Just if Yvonne could note for the record, I joined about 8 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Yes, I got you at 7:48, I believe. Yeah, okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yep.
All right, John.
Madam
again?
Chair,
Yes.
I have a question.
ahead.
I believe there was one more letter sent to audience and Coventry CTW before the timeline, the deadline.
Okay. And how would I know that it wasn't in my pile?
Who does that? Is that Amanda that does that?
I
Yeah.
checked at 7:27. They were supposed to be in by 7.
At 5:09? Oh.
Do you want to elaborate, John?
Actually, I think it was just sent, so there was a letter sent by Emma Eaton,
That was budget.
but it was also sent to John and Lisa and me as audience of citizen comments.
No, it's not the address, it's a problem.
So this is the confusion I'm talking about, and as
It
much
was
as I
sent-
often disagree with Mr. Morgan, tonight I'm in 100% agreement that in some way, I mean, there were only 8 letters that were sent to budget.
And
We should at least summarize them or let people know what was there before we start talking tonight, because that's going to influence our discussion tonight.
Just,
So people should know what's influencing us.
but the email address is on the agenda.
Yeah.
I understand.
And we all got them, and they will be then attached to our minutes so people will know what we read and what we saw. Yes, John?
But
yeah.
Madam Chair, you should be reading the one sent to audience at coventryct.org, correct?
Yes.
All right, there was one sent at 5:08 p.m.
It was sent to the wrong email address, John, just so you know.
No, I believe it was sent to both.
I've got it at 5:11 to budget comments. I can't get on to see if it went to audience at 5:08. It's not letting me on.
But
I don't think,
I think if you wish to discuss that under your chair council reports, you can. But it was sent to audience of citizens, not audience.
All right.
So the email address was wrong. The time was correct.
Okay. Next on our agenda is acceptance of minutes. The first minutes we need to accept are from our May 4th, 2020 meeting. Do I have a motion?
so moved.
Thank you, Lisa Thomas. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Matt Jr. Any changes, additions, or corrections to these? Well, I have a question on the minutes on page 4, under steering committee. Item 6C1. It looks like there's a motion to appoint Kathy Mitchell, a motion to nominate Carolyn Garrity, and then a motion to nominate Kathy Mitchell. So, I guess if I'm reading it. So the first motion was what came out of steering, and the other two were to nominate so that we could vote on it?
I believe the first was a report of what was done at steering,
Yep.
and the motions were put on the table.
Right, I think so.
Okay. Does anybody else have any corrections, additions, or changes to our May 4th minutes we received?
So you're going to strike the first motion? Is that the solution?
Well, we're saying, they're saying it's a report from the steering
Just making
committee.
sure that that wasn't part of the meeting. That meeting.
There was a motion, and then there was 2 nominations.
Yeah, we have three motions there, that's the,
Right. That was my confusion with, they were each called a motion, a motion, a motion. So maybe it's a
So the
motion.
nominations should not be motions?
no, there's 3 motions and one of them is duplicative, but
Wait.
they're seconded. I think the third motion, I nominate Kathy Mitchell to the Economic Development Commission by hand, and Thomas was the motion out of steering.
No,
The second 2 motions happened at our council meeting.
right.
The first motion is from steering, I think.
No, because Matthew O'Brien Jr.
Yeah.
abstained at steering.
Oh, yeah.
Matt Jr. gave the motion out of steering as appointing Kathy Mitchell, who was out of steering. And then other people did the nominations for Carolyn Garrity, and other people still wanted Kathy Mitchell.
Yes, so it should just be explained, this is what happened at steering, and then make it clear what the 2 motions were for the meeting that these minutes are representing.
So the first motion should
Okay.
then say
recommendation.
steering recommended the appointment of Kathy Mitchell, and cross out by O'Brien Jr. and seconded by hand.
Maybe it's out of motion.
Right. It was steering's recommendation. All right.
Okay, yep.
Anybody have anything else this evening on this
I have
one?
one question.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Matt Senior.
On page 9, under 7, unfinished business, 7A. First line from the bottom, well, it starts there. However, it says, however, this is pushing the town manager and finance director to take the brunt of the savings needed. I think if the comment was the town government or the town was taking the brunt of those. I don't think it's just John and Amanda. I'm not sure how that came out.
So this is pushing the town government?
Yes.
That's what I would, or even just the town, yeah, the town government, yes. The general government is the way we say it in the budget, but I don't know, yeah, town government, I would say. And I had another question on page 10. The second paragraph, actually the last word, it says that this O'Brien Sr. seems to be sending conflicting signals to the Board of Ed. $83,000 for the WAN rack is proposed to be postponed. I don't think anybody motioned to postpone it. The board is offering to pay for that out of their non-COVID savings. So I'm not sure. I get confused on the exact wording because we've had so many meetings, but that one doesn't make sense. I don't know if we can just clean it up.
Where was that again?
On page 10, second paragraph, the last line.
Got it.
So we weren't. No one proposed to postpone that purchase. I believe that the board was offering to pay for it out of their savings in this current year.
Why don't you just...
They were postponing all of their capital purchases. I'm not trying to confuse paragraphs here, but...
So why don't you just delete, if I may, to be postponed, and substitute to be paid for this year by the board.
Fine with me, that works.
Yep. Anybody have anything else?
So I'm going to just do this once. It could happen many times. But on page 10, the second paragraph from the bottom, the very last sentence, and I'm just going to add the word preliminary goal because that brings us to the 350,000, 375,000 goal. It's a preliminary goal given to the Board of Ed. It would need to be corrected in a bunch of other places that I said it as well. So I'm not going to do that.
Actually, John Hand has a problem with that. During the meeting, it was just to use the term goal, I believe, not preliminary.
No, you kept...
Now we're 3 meetings later, you can go back and try to call it the preliminary goal, and that may be what happened, but that's not what was said during this meeting.
Yes, no, this is the meeting.
These are the minutes of the May 4th meeting and how it was talked about on May 4th.
That's your interpretation, Matt, Mr. Hand.
So
It doesn't have to be just me, you can just watch the tape.
Did you watch the tape? It's easy to say it, but did you do it?
What's that? What? No, I recall exactly the thing, because I remember that it was said many times during that meeting, which is why Matt's noting there are many places in the minutes where that would need to be changed.
Yeah,
I'm taking issue with it.
You're on the wrong meeting. You're on the wrong meeting. The meeting that you're talking about when the preliminary goal was given was not the May 4th meeting. The board had already given us their proposed initial proposal by April 30th. You're on the wrong meeting. This was the meeting where you kept saying I was moving the goalpost, and I kept correcting you that I wasn't. So that's this meeting. You're on the wrong meeting.
All right, so this is the one where you moved the goalpost.
No, I never moved the goalpost. This is
John, give it up, okay?
Okay.
Grow up.
Richard?
Yes, sir.
One more correction, page
Yes.
11. The first full paragraph, it's in the middle of the page. The Board of Ed and what is transferred to the it should be 1%. They don't have a 1.5%, I don't believe.
No. 1% fund.
Yep, 1% fund. Page 12, again, middle of the page, the second full paragraph. Right in the middle, it says, the assessor knows of at least 5 retirements coming from the Board of Ed side. The town budget did not propose 3% raises. I believe it was said as the board budget does, and I'd like to add that to clarify, even if you're not sure that that's the exact language. Is that okay, Yvonne? Do you understand what I'm adding? So after did not propose 3% raises, add as the board budget does.
Okay.
Matt Jr., I have a question. On the money for the library, did you vote yes?
I abstain.
That's not noted in the minutes. Do you want to fix that? It's page 16 of 17.
Yep, I do.
How do we move that?
Yeah, it has me as voting.
Yeah.
If that was can we just confirm with the tape on that one, because that's a vote and that's, you know, important.
It's fine with me. Yeah, I was told that I couldn't tell myself being on Zoom who said what, to be honest with you. So.
No, I understand. So that is for the county for the design process?
Yes. So it's
Set that on tape. For the vote? Yes, please. Okay.
it's 8C.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, each seat just doesn't have to be on that page.
That's all I have.
All right, thank you.
There's a lot of little picky things.
Anybody else?
Yvonne, by the way, I'm not criticizing you at all. I think this has got to be very, very difficult for you, and I thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
So do you want to table this while you look at this issue?
Move the table till we get, move the table to the next meeting.
All right. Before we do that,
Second.
okay, are there any other changes that we want before we finish with this set of minutes?
There was some breakup. What are you tabling?
We're going to table approval of these
Final
minutes,
approval until we
Yvonne.
get that vote, Lisa, that you asked for.
Yeah. Okay. So all those in favor of tabling these minutes until Yvonne checks the record and sets it straight, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous, Yvonne. Our next set of minutes would be May 15th, 2020.
Move to approve the minutes of May 15th.
Thank you, Matt
Second,
Senior.
Matt Junior.
Second,
Matt
Matt
Senior,
Junior.
sorry, Yvonne.
Thank you. All right, any changes, corrections, or additions to this set?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Page 2, first paragraph. Last sentence. It reads now, we should also keep in mind that we don't want to create a big hole in the budget or hold some in reserves in the event of mid-year grant cuts. And what I said many times was create a hole in next year's budget, so I'd like to correct that.
Yep.
We're not creating a hole in this year's budget by removing capital items. In the next paragraph, it says it's suggested to move $35,000 from COVID-19 savings to the contingency fund to have a cushion. We first of all, we didn't move any funds from COVID-19 savings. We were moving funds from the council CNREF fund in the proposed budget, and it was $25,000 for contingency. But throughout that paragraph, the source of those funds is the town council CNREF fund, not the COVID funds at all.
Okay, so you're moving 25,000 from CNREF for what?
So yeah, so the second, it's suggested to move. I made the motion, so it was suggested to move $25,000 from the CNR. So let's back up. So the town council, the Board of Ed had offered to purchase the fiber optic, to pay for the fiber optic project. We had it in CNREF. That's where it was being paid for in our budget. So that allowed us to remove those funds from CNREF, and that's what we were doing. So we removed the funds for 25,000 went to contingency. But none of these were non-COVID or COVID funds. It was the town council's actual funds in our budget, proposed budget, that were being moved.
So we're only striking it is suggested to move so forth and putting it in, moving from CNREF, 25,000 for contingency. Correct?
I'm reading through, I'm sorry. Hang on.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm not sure about the sentence where well, maybe he's talking about the board's action, so I'll leave that in there then, I guess. Okay, yeah, so, but it comes from CNREF, the funds. On the same page, the last paragraph, the second line, we're talking about the police cruisers. In this case, it says the recommendation is to take it out of the budget this year, and it was to take one of the two, so just changing it to one out of the budget this year. And in the same paragraph, it's got a little mixed up here, but I had said that we should probably hold off on all capital purchases for anything not immediately necessary. But I did continue to say, and this action, meaning buying it in this year's budget, would assure they get a cruiser right away. I hope everyone remembers me saying that. That would work. So I just would like to add after not immediately necessary, I guess. This would assure that the police would receive one cruiser right away. That's all. That was the point. Because if the other one had to be postponed, then they would at least get one right away.
Immediately necessary. Okay.
I'd like some help from everyone on this one, but when we talked about the library issue, pretty much, I'm certain because I was running that part of the meeting, I said that this isn't going to be decided tonight, we need more information, let's get back to working on the budget. That's basically what I put forward. It doesn't appear anywhere that I said anything, so I'm kind of flummoxed as to exactly where to put it in, but if someone can help me, that would be great. It could go at the bottom, I don't care, but it should be in there somewhere.
And Khan is Khan, several places.
Which page are you on, Matt?
3 of 6.
Page 3?
Page 3 of 6,
All
right?
right, and Yvonne, did you hear John Elsesser say that Margaret Kahn's last name is spelled Khan? If you could change that throughout the document?
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the next page, page 4, top of the
Oh,
page. Oh, go
Yes,
ahead.
John. Hand.
John Hand has a question while we're on page 3. About halfway through that very long last paragraph, let's see, there's a line that says, Williams feels that operation needs to be reduced. Richard, could you clarify that?
Maybe put an S on it, you mean, or something?
Let me find it.
And
Okay, so it's about halfway down that paragraph.
First word of the line is operation.
Yeah, yes, that's right. And then back up the line above that. So.
So maybe clarify what operation or what operations.
The operations of the library.
I think just add an S. Just add an S.
They do.
That's another discussion. Not for the minute.
Yeah.
You broke up.
Keep going.
Add an S to the word operations.
Is that what
Yeah.
Richard wants?
Okay.
I haven't heard Richard
Is
say
that what you
that.
want, Richard?
Yes. Yes, that's perfect.
On page 4, the first line on the top, I hope I didn't say this. O'Brien Senior asked how the registrars can justify $510,000. I don't think
I know, I saw
I
that.
can't, I guarantee it.
I hope I didn't say that. That would be pretty bad. I don't remember what the number is, but that's not it.
They really would have to justify $510,000.
Do you know what the number
Not off the
proposed
top
is?
of my head.
Is it in this purple budget you gave me tonight?
No, but I can get it online. Hold on.
Why don't you just say a large
The main
increase?
budget, $5,000. That's what I remember, but I don't remember what the number was.
Could be 10.
All right, anything else on this page while Amanda looks to see if she has the amount that the registrars are asking for an increase?
So a couple of times when it says fund balance, it should say use of fund balance. Because there's difference in the meaning, and that's what I was saying, because we were using fund balance. So in the second paragraph, O'Brien Senior said the use of fund balance is about $200,000. Not that the fund balance is $200,000, which is really $5.4 million or something.
Okay.
And and then change which is around. Or maybe I said which is around 13%. It'll be clear if it said which would leave us around 13%.
Or which, yeah.
Yeah. In the next paragraph, the second line, it says it starts with budget is 6.9 times more than the town. It's 2.6 times. Just so people don't think that would be a big. That would be like a South Windsor budget. The third paragraph, second line, change 6.9 to 2.6.
Matt Senior, you mentioned South Windsor? I don't see that.
No. I said if their budget was 6.9 times bigger, then it would be like $70,000. That would be like a South Windsor budget. That's what I said.
70,000?
Not for the minutes. This is not for the minutes.
Okay.
Oh, you mean like 70 million? I
Yeah.
understand. I think I mean. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now I understand what you're saying. So in the same paragraph, the second or third line from the bottom, it should once again say the use of fund balance rather than the fund of. The use of fund balance of 200 to 220 would be a reasonable balance. And just to make a correction, I'm not sure if this was what was actually said, but in the big paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the sixth line down where it says is assuming 250,000 from the 1.5% fund, it's assuming 1.5% from fund balance. It's different than our 1.5% fund.
1.5%.
No, take out 1.5% fund and just put in the use of fund balance. From the fund, from fund, I'm sorry. It's assuming $250,000 from fund balance. That's all it should say.
Which doesn't even make sense in that conversation.
I have, maybe Amanda can help me with this one on page 5. Right in the middle of the page. The back house reported assuming the town cuts are accepted as presented, the capital, the debt, and Board of Ed cuts as proposed, and using $220,000 of fund balance, we still need to cut $139,000, leaving $109,000. I'm just not sure how those two go.
So this may be another
I
set
mean,
of
if
minutes.
you take out the leaving 109 maybe at that point in the conversation.
30,000 is coming.
And I can't tell you if this is where it happened, but the only way that these numbers make any sense would be if that's where I said we could use 250,000 perhaps, and that would leave 109. But that's not what it says, so I'm not sure that's where it occurred.
I think I did give a range, but I
Okay, so maybe you said if we use 250, that would leave 109 or something. I mean, try to make sense to me, that's all.
yes, I think that's exactly what I would have said. If we use 220, we would need to cut 139, and if we use 250, we would need to cut 109.
9.
Correct.
Good. Okay. Those are all the major ones I have.
I have the number for the registrars up on page 4. It's 5,510.
Oh, so we're pretty close.
Yeah. Rounding error.
Does anybody else have anything to add, change, or correct in these minutes?
I do, Julie, Lisa Conan. The last, well, actually, the biggest paragraph on page 4, towards the end, is talking about some of my comments, and just reading through here, I'm not sure that, I just think it needs to be cleaned up a little, because there just seems to be a lot of, I don't know, kind of phrases rather than sentences. And it, I don't need a verbatim saying it. If you want to, get rid of some of this stuff, that's fine. But this doesn't seem to make much sense.
Can you pick a point? Which one, Lisa, or something?
Let me. Towards the end of it, it says, Conant stated O'Brien Sr.'s comments as fair points. This is a difficult situation for everyone. We need to look at budgets to look forward to the next year. These are some of our concerns. There needs to be a balance. There is a comfort level of who is doing what, the towns, other towns, residents, etc. I mean, just talking about other towns, I mean, it's just kind of thrown out there. There's no real connection.
So we could just take that sentence out.
I would take, information about what South Windsor is doing was attached to the Finance Committee report. I think that's what you had said, Matt Senior, and
okay.
It doesn't really, you wouldn't know that because.
Yeah, we didn't have any comments at our meeting about it, actually. So, I mean, what I said was that no comments were made at our meeting about the.
No, I'm talking about the sentence before that.
Okay.
But there's no attribution, so it doesn't really,
Oh, the town, other towns, the residents, et cetera?
Yeah,
We'll just
yeah.
take that out, just cross it out. Is that okay?
That's fine, or, just go back and just clean it, I don't know.
Less is sometimes more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
What?
So
say again?
strike the town, other towns, the residents, etc., strike that. Information about
Okay.
South Windsor's,
Strike that.
strike that.
Okay.
Wait,
No, don't strike.
Well, you guys go.
What does it mean there is a discomfort level with who is doing what?
Well, I think.
Who said that?
That was Lisa Conant's comments.
I think I said that, but
About
that's what I mean, there's
Yeah.
just like, there's no context woven in here, so it's kind of,
Is it possible to, at the end of, we need to look at budgets to look forward to the next year, which seems to be what Lisa was trying to get at, and then strike the next, these are some of our concerns, there needs to be a balance, that'll make sense, but then the next two don't make sense.
So strike them? What do you,
Yeah, I would strike that, and I would also strike, no
just
comments were
say what
made
the
about
strike,
that at the
please.
meeting.
Say what the strike, if you could, please.
All right, so maybe it would make it clearer if we struck, there is a discomfort level with who is doing what. Then
Okay.
also strike the town, other towns, the residents, etc., strike that.
Yep.
And then maybe it was Matt Senior who said information about what South Windsor is doing was attached to the Finance Committee report.
No, it was actually you. And then I said no comments were made about that at our meeting.
I said it was attached to the Finance Committee report?
Yeah, and then the last
Okay.
sentence goes
You're-
back
you're-
to.
And then I go back to that I don't know what this next sentence, no comments were made about that at the meeting. I don't know what that is.
that's,
And then I said, similar to what I said at finance, we are not comparing apples to apples, and I was referring to if we compare Coventry to South Windsor, we're not comparing apples to apples. So there's a lot mixed together in there.
yeah, that's why I was just saying, if just go back and listen and clean it up, or, just strike it,
attributions, it sounds like.
attributions, I think, are critical.
So Lisa said information about what South Windsor is doing was attached to the Finance Committee report. I commented, no comments were made about that at the meeting. Then Thomas commented again. So that's what happened. If you want to keep it or strike it, I'm happy with either one.
No comments were made about what at the meeting, Matt?
South Windsor.
About remember, so you were talking about the attachment on the agenda that had to do with the story about South Windsor and the one about Tolland. And you had raised it, and I said, well, no comments were even made about that at our meeting, because I was reporting, that that's what was going on.
And I think to preface that, my discomfort level was comparing other towns.
Yeah, I remember it that way too.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I brought up the fact that other towns had been attached to the Finance Committee agenda, and I thought that that was not comparing apples to apples.
That's fine. That's what it kind of says.
But is that important to these minutes? Like, if it's that muddled, could we just strike everything after where Lisa says there needs to be a balance? Do we really need the rest of that?
I like the rest of it the way that you just added the attribution.
Okay, I give up.
You just fixed it.
That works too.
Okay, we
Did you get it,
It's her
Yvonne?
comment, so if she wants to strike it, I'll let her. I'm happy to have her do that. I'll take mine with it, that's fine.
Let's do that.
All right, so we're taking Lisa
Yeah.
and Matt Senior's comments right off?
Yep.
The last couple sentences?
Strike
Yeah,
everything
yeah,
after Lisa
paragraph.
Conan says there needs to be a balance. Boom.
Did you get that, Yvonne?
Yeah.
Boom.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you, Lisa Conan. Anybody else have anything to add, change, or correct? All right, all those in favor of approving these minutes, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Is unanimous
As amended.
as amended. As always.
That doesn't change.
All right,
Yep.
can we get through the May 18th ones? Let me see, how big are they?
16 pages.
Is there anybody that would
Move to table
want
this
to
to the next
motion?
meeting, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Matt Senior.
Did somebody
A
just
second?
Matt Senior was gonna table them, and was that Lisa Conant?
It was,
All
yeah.
right. Any discussion on that, tabling them to our next council meeting, Lisa Thomas?
Does that mean I can't reference them tonight?
No. You can reference the unadopted minutes.
Okay.
All right, all those in favor of tabling these to our next council meeting,
Oh, wait.
please? Yes,
Madam Chair,
yes, John,
this is the discussion of the tabling and everything, right? Right
correct.
before we vote?
Yep,
Okay, I just wanted to point out that somebody made mention of how many pages there were, and we have like a page and a quarter, single space of all the people that took the time to write in and share their thoughts during the audience.
okay.
That's all.
All right, all those in favor of tabling these minutes to our next regular council meeting, please say aye. Aye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. All right. Next on our agenda would be our consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve our consent agenda as presented?
So moved, Lisa Thomas.
Oh, wait, is this where we get to remove items?
Yeah.
Not
You're
yet.
just making a motion to approve
I
it.
need a second to Lisa Thomas's motion.
Second.
Thank you, Matt
Matt
Senior.
Senior.
Okay, is there anything anybody would like to remove, John Hand?
I'd like to remove item 9A.
I would too.
Me too. All
Is
right,
that a second, Matthew?
anybody,
You need a second.
is there
I know.
anything else anybody else wants to remove from our consent agenda? All right, hearing none. All those who are in favor of approving our consent agenda, removing item 9A, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Yes.
Can you specifically ask for abstain and no, because that might be getting lost as well.
Okay, because I'm watching them raise
I
their
know.
hands, but okay, for Yvonne's sake, et cetera.
Yeah.
Would aye or nay?
All right, that was unanimous for anybody listening or watching.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, now we're on to reports. I've been following what would I say? Our census numbers, and we're doing well. We're not doing as well as Tolland, but so anybody that's listening or watching that hasn't taken the time to fill out their census, please do so. Our farmers market will be opening next Sunday, and I'm hoping Lisa Conant, who seems well versed in it, will bring that up. And lastly, our fire department, our newly appointed Chief Bud Myers has now appointed people under him, and it continues. So I would certainly like to thank all of the people in the fire department that have either volunteered for or accepted the positions that Bud Myers and the other chiefs have now appointed them to. They're making great progress, and I really appreciate that. Are there any other council members that would like to report on anything this evening? Lisa
I think,
Thomas?
Madam Chair, just that I would like to, Madam
Hang on,
Senior, just
Matt.
thank everyone.
Matt, Lisa Thomas had her hand up and I had called on her. If you could wait a
I can't
moment.
see her, sorry.
I know. Go ahead, Lisa.
It's ironic I'm taking off my mask to say this, but now that we are moving into reopening, I would just like to remind everybody that there is a requirement to wear a mask when you enter any business or dine outdoors at a restaurant. I have seen a few people not adhering to that rule, and I'd like to say that's the rule, so do it, which is true, but I'd also like to say that wearing a mask is not just for yourself, but for all of the people around you. And if we're going to be able to continue to phase in reopening our economy, we need to be aware of our own safety and the safety of those around us. Because if we get a spike, everything's going to start closing down all over again. I did notice when I was at a business in Tolland that they had posted a sign that said if you wanted to report that somebody was not following guidelines, that you could call 211. I wanted to check to find out if that's true.
Yes.
Then perhaps I would encourage our local businesses to post similar signs, at least as a deterrent to people who might choose to enter without their mask on, which is certainly not fair to that business, which then risks being fined or having to close down again.
If I may, just clarification. The 211 is to report the business for not following the rules.
Oh, Lord. All right, so listen, if you go into one of our small businesses without your mask on and someone sees that happen, and somebody calls in 211 to report the business, you're harming our neighbors and our business owners. So please, wear your masks, be respectful of our small businesses. They're doing the best they can to get back on their feet. On another topic, I asked at our last meeting if we could get a status update from our registrars at a not too distant from now town council meeting on what's being done as we get closer to the primary. And I'm just wondering if there's been any movement on that.
It's tentatively scheduled for June 15th. Marge Roach says she does not feel comfortable doing Zoom. So we'll have to try to figure out how to...
And are we going to have the Republican registrar as well? I would like to see both registrars.
They haven't responded.
Okay, so it's not okay. That's not okay. This is not a registrar's office that is run by just one party. It is the representation of an elected Republican and elected Democrat, and all constituents deserve fair representation by the registrar. So what do we do about that?
I have done the invitation. I have not received a response, so I leave it to the political leadership to respond to that.
So political leadership, the three of you are sitting at this town council meeting. I implore you, please, get representation for your constituents.
I will invite her and make sure she gets the message.
That's my pleasantness for tonight.
Matt
Thank
Senior?
Me?
Yeah.
Senior or junior?
Senior.
Senior. I just wanted to thank everybody that's been working so hard on the budget, and especially thank the Board of Ed and Dave Patron. We've made additional requests of them for information recently, and they've been able to respond pretty quickly. This is a difficult process. It's like something we've never done before. Some of the systems, I think, are not set up necessarily to respond to quick changes in information. So sometimes it seems like information is lagging or whatever, but I just want to thank everyone and let everyone know that I'm appreciative of the efforts that they're doing, the work that's been put in. I think that in the end we're finally, we're eventually getting to the correct information through, but they've been very helpful and responsive, to answering questions. And on our side, I think John has been working ridiculous hours and numbers of days, and I'm not sure he gets days off anymore. Amanda also. So I'm sure the other other members of our staff are as well. Those are the ones that I have direct contact with. I just wanted to thank everyone and the council. We've had to put in a lot of extra time and effort to get to this point in time as well. And it's been a very deliberative but very aggressive process in order to keep up with the changes and what's been going on. I just want to say thank you. That's all.
You're welcome. Thank you. Any other council members? John Hand?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I would like to just comment briefly on, it seems like for the budget comments that we received just a summary of it. It seemed like we received, I think, 8 or 9 communications total, maybe 8, maybe 9. And that there were basically, let's call it 8, there were 6 for supporting the Board of Ed budget with no cut and the library with no cut, and there were 2 against. So that's kind of the summary. in the interest of time saving, I will read a little bit from just one of the letters. I'm reading tonight to thank the Board of Education for their commitment to contributing as much as possible back to the town to support Town Council's effort to achieve a 0% tax increase budget. To date, the Board of Ed has achieved nearly $800,000 in contributions towards this goal through budget cuts, cost reductions, and their decision to give back 100% of the COVID closure-related savings that have been realized and negotiated for. Given that the COVID-related savings number has increased substantially since the last report was made to the Town Council, going from a projected $158,000 in savings to $291,000 in savings, an increase of $133,000. I would ask that the Council vote to repeal the additional $50,000 cut in the Board of Ed's operating budget for the next year, as the COVID savings have risen over $133,000, far outmatching the Council's request. The 2020-2021 school year is an unimaginably complex puzzle that the Board of Education will have to solve in a remarkably short period of time. The costs associated with being able to safely open Coventry schools to educate our students will be significant, no matter what that plan looks like. The Town Council's 0% tax increase budget goals can still be met without the additional $50,000 cut, and the Board of Ed will need those funds to support our staff and students. Thank you for your time and your care for all of Coventry's children in this matter. And that one was from Emma Eaton at 41 Shawn Circle.
Any other?
Reading letters, Madam Chair, I'll read a letter.
Okay, go ahead, Matt Jr.
This is from Robert Chipkin, 454 Cassidy Hill Road. I've reviewed the proposed Coventry budget for fiscal year 2020-21 and have general comments. The proposed budget does not recognize that the town of Coventry, as well as the state of Connecticut, is considerably poorer than it was last year and will continue to be so in the year to come. Individuals have lost jobs and income, businesses are shuttered, perhaps forever, and Coventry residents are rightly fearful about the future. It's inappropriate that the proposed spending budgets do not recognize this reality, and they should be further reduced to reflect this. We can't continue to spend monies that we won't collect, especially if we rely on promised funds from the state government. Those funds will undoubtedly be reduced this year, and we should be prepared for that eventuality by reducing expenses. The Board of Education's budget continues to increase despite at least a decade of declining enrollments in our schools. Of course, you'll receive the typical "we can't reduce education spending, it will decimate our children's future" remarks. These can be safely ignored as they come from those who put support for the school spending regardless of the level proposed. These same statements year by year and are perpetual background noise better than the Coventry Board of Education recognize that they're the taxpayers' representatives, not the cheerleaders of the school system itself. I would suggest that we consider going back to the drawing board and reduce the proposed school system budget by a further 5%, and have the board, together with the superintendent, prioritize the proposed spending to accomplish this. I just want to make clear those are not my views. That's a letter, Robert Chipkin, 454 Cassidy Hill Road.
Thank you. Richard? He's muted.
Richard.
There we go.
All right, folks, this report of council members' remarks and things that we've attended to, this is no place for these letters to be read. And we've gone through this over the years. Let's just keep it to what we're supposed to do, or what we're reporting on. It has nothing to do with the letters. And, everybody's grandstanding, so let's stop it.
Thank you, Richard. Anybody else? Lisa Koenig?
Yes, just to piggyback on a couple of things. First of all, the Coventry Farmers Market is indeed opening on next Sunday. It's hard to believe already, the 7th, and they'll be doing it through online orders, and they'll inform the vendors. You drive to the field, and they will load up your car for you. So it's curbless in the field, and pretty much contactless, which is kind of sterile, but I think, you know, I know that Erica and her team can really make it great and fun, even when we're doing social distancing. The other thing I wanted to mention was kind of a shout out to a resident and her family. Laura Rand has been really cheering up people all around town, donating her time and I'm sure money to prepare hearts on wooden slivers, and they look beautiful. And just want to thank her for what she's been doing, and the efforts of her family as well. And also to Lisa's point about wearing masks. I was just reading the other day. The latest science is that the more exposure you have indoors, and with it, poorly circulated air, the worse it is. Outside it isn't as bad, especially if you're staying apart. But inside is a problem until they can get some handle on this. So.
Okay, thank you.
And it is good, just to think about other folks that maybe do need to be out. Not mentioning any names, but do need to be out, and that kind of at the mercy of everybody else and their behavior. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa Thomas.
I just want to add to what Lisa Conant was saying about the farmers market. You just need to go to the Coventry Farmers Market at Hale Homestead website to do your online ordering. I couldn't see, Lisa, do you know how far in advance you need to do that?
I looked at it this weekend, and I was trying to figure out how, they haven't started the ordering yet, so I don't know.
That's what it looked
how
like
far.
Check the website.
No, I'm sure that, follow them on Facebook. I'm sure there'll be directions on Facebook too.
They're still getting the site up and running. We're working on getting an online payment platform in place, and I know Jean and Erica have been testing it over the weekend. So that should be up and running in the next 2 days, and then I'd expect more information at that time.
Okay. All right.
Perfect. Thank you, Amanda.
Sure. All right, next on our agenda would be COVRA. John?
So COVRA, we are operationally working just on Saturdays at this point, but we do need to establish the COVRA rate for July 1. Amanda did send you out kind of the budget, and I can let Amanda kind of talk through the needs, but clearly we're well aware of what happened with the China sword policy, where they stopped taking recyclables. Instead of around a $30 credit, we have almost a $30, $35 charge. So there's a huge loss of revenue to COVRA, which, the amount in the fund can handle a little bit, it just can't absorb this level of loss. So if you choose to do something...
John, just to be clear, that's a $60 or $65 swing per ton of recycling?
Yep.
That's unimaginable. That's crazy.
So if you choose to do like $10 this year, I'm pretty sure you're going to be back next year, because while the recycling market may change, it will take a number of years for people to build U.S.-based plants to deal with this. Or if you want to kind of bite the bullet and do $15 now, then next year we probably will not as likely have to change depending on what the market looks like. But if you looked coming in the future, the Hartford waste plant that we used to go to is virtually going to close because towns were unwilling to pay the fee that it was going to cost $135 to $140,000 a ton to burn. We're down in $70 a ton, and we have that kind of locked in for a couple of years. But that tells you
John,
yep.
John, can you specify, because you're talking about trash, other people might think you're thinking about recycling. I just don't want there to be a lot of confusion.
I'm just letting you know that our trash costs are going to likely be affected by the market when the largest plant in Connecticut is going to go under and start shipping stuff to Ohio and Pennsylvania. the price per ton there is going to go, and they're going to try to take our contract where we're going now in Lisbon so our price is going to skyrocket in the future for burning trash too. And that's the relationship I was trying to make, is there's not a good future coming here that if you do $10 now, I can almost assure you that we're going to have to do money next year. Or if you do $15 now, we're still subsidizing out of fund balance the operation of the year. So Amanda, I don't know if you want to go through more.
I did include the narrative from the appendix related to Cobra with the agenda. I think the third page is really the most important one for this discussion. Going from 2018, we had a $10 credit to 2019 where we started getting charged for dirty recycling. We increased $12.76 per household. When we went up this year to now being charged for the recycling, we went up an additional $9, and next year, based on contract rates and updating number of units, we're looking at another addition of $10.75. So over the 3-year period, per household, we're looking at $32.51 a household. So I think the next 2 years, unless our rates significantly change, we're going to need to seriously address the rate issue.
And how many households are we talking about?
About 4,500.
Okay, that's why I keep saying 4,600, so I wasn't sure if it had grown.
We don't do condos.
Right.
So we do actually one of them. They pay.
4813.
4813, thank you, Amanda.
Madam Chair?
Yes. Matt,
Yeah, so quick comment and then a motion. We've been pretty fortunate in the past couple of years. We actually, reduced the rate by a total of $10, but we were still adding to our fund balance. So it's really, I just want people to appreciate the dramatic change in the market and the opportunities for recycling and the costs for waste disposal that are driving this. When we talked about this in finance, I recommended that we move forward with a $15 increase, and I would like to make that motion. I think that it's prudent. I don't think we can draw our fund balance unreasonably, going forward. And I think that people can appreciate that there's been a dramatic change and that this is a necessary change as well. I did make a motion in there. If anybody wants?
I second it.
Thank you, Richard. Any further discussion? John, I have a quick question. As I'm getting all these packages delivered, is there any recycling that actually is desirable? Like when we used to flatten our cardboard and tie it up with twine, is that the type of thing that we could focus on dropping it off in a bin here or at Public Works? Is that worth anything if we...
So the cardboard still has a market. Don't tie it.
Okay, good. That was a pain to me.
When they went to commingled, certainly break them down,
Right.
but don't tie them because they use air blower and other technologies, so they need everything separated. But and don't put cans and bottles in a bag because those have to be ripped open. Just dump it all loose into the container. To answer your question, the markets vary dramatically, but for environmental purposes, the law, they should all be recycled. So if you have too many boxes at your house, you can bring them to the Public Works garage during their working hours, 7 to 3, and dispose of them obviously free of charge, or at the transfer station on Saturdays. So we increased the size of the cardboard container at the transfer station because it was getting filled up every Saturday. So as people are shopping more to go to local stores less for COVID purposes, the volume of cardboard has increased. And if you do a couple tricks on your barrel, you could also make it last a little bit more. Kind of all the glass and cans go more towards the bottom of the barrel, and the cardboard more towards the top of the barrel, because once cardboard gets in the bottom, it sometimes leaves a void.
Yeah.
So get all the small stuff on the bottom, and then cardboard can stack up. But the answer is yes, we have provisions for people to do that. And we have noticed even clothing bins are getting filled up because I think people are using the time to go through their closets and do all the chores, so.
Any other questions for John or Amanda on our COBRA?
We have a motion on the table, Madam Chair.
Understand. Everybody in favor of the motion to increase our COBRA bill for residents $15 annually, please say aye. Aye. Any abstentions? Any nays?
Nay.
I abstain.
2 nays. You abstain, Matt Jr.? And Lisa Thomas? Nay for Matt Jr., nay for Lisa Thomas. Do I have that correct?
It's just the phasing. I know it needs to be done.
Okay. Next item.
We can't hear Lisa's comments, I'm sorry.
She said it's just a phasing in. It's her explanation for her vote. Project updates from John Elsesser.
Oh, you have a memo. I'll try to go over just a couple high points. We got the CROG Foundation report for testing. We now up to 165 houses have been tested in town. You mentioned the fire officers. Last week on Friday we opened the bids for the asbestos removal as part of that cafeteria plan renovations. For once they actually came in very favorable, so they're evaluating the low bid. The second lowest bid we've done business with before, and they were only about $1,000 more, so it's not ridiculously low, which is something to worry about. So they're vetting that. We are out to bid on Folly Lane Bridge, and so far we have 8 companies that have picked up the plans for that, so we're hoping to get good bids there. I received an email from the superintendent today based on the governor's change to allow more people outside and gathering. They are eliminating some of the restrictions in use of the kind of walking track and the facilities, the school facility grounds. Organized sports still have a lot of restrictions on them for team sports, so we still have to adhere to those, but the school grounds, based on the governor's change, have loosened up. The buildings are still not available and not open, but they are trying to loosen up based on some feedback they were getting about people wanting a safe place to walk and so forth. I want to mention our Economic Development Commission. You've heard that they've lined up 13 interns from Nichols College to help our local businesses. They've started work with 7 local businesses, so there are teams of 3 working with these local businesses. They're going through a gambit of building websites, getting them e-commerce sites set up, doing business plans, and the value per business is $5,000 to $8,000 if you went to the private sector to get this type of work done. So it's an exciting opportunity for our business, and the students are excited about it. And the Economic Development Commission, some of their members will also be providing quality control and feedback for the students to make it a better learning experience. So I wanted to mention that. At our last meeting, the council did adopt a motion allowing sick leave carryover due to COVID. That was with the agenda packet. We had an agreement specifically with the police union, and we did intend to try to have that for all our unions and non-union people.
Only the vacation, not
just the vacation. No other provisions but vacation carryover through December. So I didn't know whether that was the council's impression that we're dealing it for all employees for the vacation. If not, we need to bring it back to an agenda. So I just need to be clear on what your understanding of that. But we had talked about this beyond just that, but then the motion was specifically for that police agreement.
Right. Do any council members have a recollection or a preference at this time? Lisa Thomas?
I recall the conversation only centering around our police officers. I'm not opposed to doing it for all our employees, but I only recollect the conversation being around our police officers.
Richard?
I agree with Lisa, that's what I remember.
Right.
It was strictly police.
John Hand?
Ditto.
Agreed, thank you. All right, so then why don't you please prepare something for our June 15th council meeting,
Okay.
please? Okay?
So can I make a quick comment before you go, Fred?
Yep.
Didn't we also talk about our town manager and others that had vacation time that they weren't able to use, and that that would also allow them to move it forward? Wasn't that all part of the same discussion?
We did talk about that, and that's why there's a little discussion, but that's why I'm bringing it back to you, because we did have that broad discussion.
I thought that was part of it myself, so that's what I recall. But that's fine. I don't mind a clarification if you want to go forward
Yeah.
with a further motion. That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Anything further, John, on your project?
No, unless you have questions.
Yes, Lisa Conant.
Lisa Conant, John, I just wanted to ask you about the personnel rules and working on the appendices.
Yes, it's on our list. We have lots of things on our list that we really just can't get to. You just today got the draft of my return to work plan. That took about 30 hours or 40 hours of my time. It may not look like it, but that was a lot of one-on-one working with the department heads and measuring things, looking for what's on the marketplace. COVID-19 has sucked the life out of our organization and trying to make it a safe workplace. I had hoped to get that out last week and just finished it today. So everything that is not critical has to been set aside. I mean, it's just, you can't imagine the time it's taking to deal with this virus. I can't tell you how much time. So yes, it still remains on our list. That's why I leave it in my report, because we know it's there. We have other banking things that aren't done, but we got to get our town hall to a point where we can reopen. And the plan I sent is just a draft going back out for employee comment.
I don't know that Lisa asked her whole question.
Well, whatever we can do to help with things like that. I know that I seem to remember from last year even that the human resources issue was still on the plate, and we still needed to do that work. I am getting a little concerned. We've had a couple of meetings canceled with the steering committee, and I know it's only a couple, but since we've been seated, that is the third of the meeting. So whatever we can do on our end to help you out, John, we're willing.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
Matt Senior, along those lines, I've heard somewhere that John could use some help with putting on Zoom meetings and technical assistance. I'm not sure where I heard that, but
where did you hear that?
I was wondering if we could have any discussion as to how we might be of assistance, because I think it's a critical part of how we're doing business, and I don't understand if it has to fall only on John's lap. We can't operate and not have the town manager be able to participate, so
Right.
I'm trying to...
I agree.
It's my understanding from Amanda that our IT department was here today, so our YouTube should be streaming properly. And John had to run from one building to another to get this current council meeting started.
So we have a plan, and part of this is now we have a plan. We have to have a separate Zoom account because you can't start one meeting and have another meeting. So we have a couple of Zoom accounts, but when we have to just organize that, if we have an executive session, it will have to be somebody else's Zoom
I
account.
can use mine, and then I can set up his for this.
So,
We're getting through it, Matt Senior.
but
But I don't disagree that if there is a citizen or a town council member that is experienced in some of these things, that they could volunteer a little bit of time to help would be appreciated.
I mean,
Well, that's always appreciated, but I was actually asking if there was a more formal process that could be assisting John at this point. I'm proposing that, I'm wondering if there's a contract consulting, some kind of a service thing that would be helpful, would allow him to spend, the 3 hours he's not sleeping, doing something other than the IT portion of our job, of his job.
So contracted out or
I
paid?
said that the wrong way, by the way. The 3 hours when he is sleeping is the other. I did say that the wrong way there. Sorry about that.
Lisa Thomas?
He's working 24 hours a day is my point.
All right, go ahead, Lisa.
I'm just curious, when you say your Zoom account, you mean your personal Zoom account?
No,
No.
my work.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
We have about 3 accounts now?
4, I think we ended up needing
accounts.
4 accounts that we upgraded to Pro that can have the recording function, and we've been sharing them. The rec committee uses my account, but they're all with our town of Coventry email addresses paid for by the town.
So one idea that I'm starting to think of, actually for the town hall reopening, is that I may need a door monitor. Because when you start spacing out people to come into the town hall, we just can't handle that many people in the building. The hall is actually only 5 feet wide. So once in the town clerk's office can handle 2 people at a counter, and with social distancing, the town tax collector can only handle 2 people there. So, I have stanchions up in the hallway, which can maybe hold 6 more 6 feet apart, and people will have to, with masks, be in line with masks. And I'm concerned, as you have an opportunity to read the plan, I'm proposing to lock 2 of the other doors because they're unattended, and I may need to have somebody kind of be a door attendant, because at some point, like at shopping centers, they have to limit the number of people into the building, and we have to, I think, create a communications meeting. And that may be a good summer job for a youth, because they're not getting hired for summer camp. There's going to be a major youth unemployment issue that all the summer jobs are disappearing. And I know one other high point, people are angry about the beaches. We had to recreate our lifeguards. I mean, we can't do mouth-to-mouth anymore. We had to buy, tubes and pumps and train people to do this. I mean, it's not overnight. So people, please have a little tolerance. I saw a lifeguard there. Well, there was one to try to maintain, it didn't have to be a lifeguard. They were serving a lifeguard so we keep them from going to somewhere else, was doing social distancing. And there was only one guard, and you can't run a beach with just one guard. So, just please, we are working hard for you. We're trying really hard. The state of Connecticut gave up in the beaches altogether because they just couldn't. So, we know we're going to have problems, and we're cutting it down to 50%. So, I guess I may come back to you and ask about hiring, getting somebody just to help and keep the town hall going. But it's possible that, we could find somebody that could help with some of these even daytime Zoom meetings. Because I do lose half an hour getting of prep time getting before a meeting. So that's taking, I'm not talking about just the ones in my office, I'm talking about when we have, library building committees and economic development commission meetings, that's just adding to the prep time for those meetings, getting it all organized. So there may be a role for that, and I appreciate the bringing the issue up. I'll have to come back maybe at your next meeting with a proposal.
Okay.
But in terms of the Zoom
Do you have
stuff,
extra time to write a proposal for that, John?
pardon?
Do you have extra time to write a proposal for that?
No. I would just have to think about it a little bit and talk about it. And Recreation Department may have people already available that we could maybe bring in. I would just need money to cover their salary for a portion of that time. I mean, they have a list of gatekeepers. Why not be a gatekeeper at the town hall?
That's a good idea.
It would make everyone feel more comfortable.
Yep.
I know I had to do curbside at Home Depot, and after waiting 20 minutes on the phone and nobody picked up, I went in. I didn't want to be there because it was just so crowded. I did not want to be there. I was only at the front of it. And it's like Saturday's bad anyway. But so an uncomfortable visit to the tax office isn't going to be good either. And we're trying everything to educate people that you don't need to be there. Dog licenses, tax payments, but it's going to be a learning curve because it's not the way you've done it. So thank you for bringing it up, and I'll try to come back for your next meeting with a proposal that doesn't have to be 18 pages long.
Thank you, John.
Is that your COVID-19 update, or do we move on to that now?
So just a couple of other things on COVID-19. We are trying real hard. Our employees in the town hall are all back starting today, full employment back versus working at home. We have a couple of employments that may have rights under the CARE Act that they may choose to use, which is their right due to child care and other issues. So we're working through those new issues now that they're back. The town hall by the end of this week should be pretty much ready. We have one space divider that's about 2 weeks out, but our sneeze guards, portable sneeze guards are available here. We're working with the library to get them ready for opening at the end of June 20th, actually 22nd, Monday the 22nd. And the tax office plexiglass will be going in hopefully tomorrow. So we're still waiting for a large ballot drop box, but we put another drop box at the back door for dog licenses, and people could put tax payments in there too. It would fill up fairly fast, but we'll hopefully get the other one in well in advance of the primary. So we're making significant progress, and I'm hoping by the end of the week that the formal recovery plan will be adopted. I will put it in place, but I do want employees' feedback because it's a certain level of comfort that they need to have, that they feel safe. And we may not always reach agreement on everything, but I want to at least hear their concerns to see if there is a solution. Because sometimes once you hear the problem, there is a different solution that they haven't been able to see. So, as a community, I think the richness of our community shows multiple times, whether it's from people giving food or bread or markers to people. The hearts are a very nice thing. If you have specific COVID questions, otherwise I'll end.
Anybody have a specific question? Nope. So thank you, John. Next item is unfinished business 7A 19/20-51, our fiscal year 2020-2001 budget deliberations.
2021, right?
Yep.
So, Madam Chair, I would like to put forward a budget motion for discussion, and then open the discussion. I also have a sister proposal. It's not actually part of the budget, so I don't know how to do this, but I'd like to start with the budget proposal, and then then have discussion around it. Do I need to it's going to be the same as the existing. Do I need to reread it word for word, John, all the way through, or?
It would only be the first one. The other motions have been established.
Okay. So I move that the Town Council make the following appropriations for the fiscal year July 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021. General Government, and Amanda, please check these for me while I'm doing. General Government, $10,249,009.
Yes.
Board of Education, $27,866,548. Capital expenditures, $828,400.
That's debt service.
Debt service, what I said.
Capital.
Okay. And capital is $664,000, and the total is $41,608,025. That's a motion.
What was the total one more time, and I'm sorry?
$41,608,025. It matches what's on the last final working document that I got from Amanda.
Okay,
I'll second that, Matt Jr.
thank you, Matt Jr. Any discussion on this motion? Lisa Thomas?
Well, so can I don't know how to do this, Madam Chairman, and maybe with some appreciation from the rest of the council. There's a sister proposal that is not actually technically part of the budget that I would like to put forward for discussion so that people understand, because it's going to affect different thinking as far as how the budget goes. And I don't know if this is appropriate to talk about another proposal within a budget discussion, discussion of a motion or not. Does anybody have an opinion about that? Or?
I think we should.
I'd like to hear it. Lisa Thomas has a question. Let Lisa Thomas ask her question. Go ahead.
I don't actually have a question. I had something I wanted to say on the motion.
Okay.
You could go ahead and say it, Lisa.
Yeah, I was actually going ahead and had been recognized to go ahead, but I was interrupted. I actually would like to suggest that we restore $50,000 to the Board of Education budget, and I'm suggesting this in light of the $291,610.93 in COVID-related savings that the Board of Ed has returned to the town's general fund. That number is $133,610 more than was on the table when we voted on the proposed budget that Matt Sr. just made the motion on. The Board of Education, through reductions in spending, negotiated savings, and other COVID-related savings, will return approximately $740,000. This is 2 times the Finance Chair's initially requested reductions in the Board of Ed budget. We can restore the $50,000, achieve the zero increase budget goal we all support, and still be more than $83,000 ahead of where we were on May 18th. In addition, as the CDC releases and revises its guidelines for summer school and for the next academic year, it is clear that unanticipated costs will continue to rise. Some of these guidelines were released after we voted on the current proposed budget. This is not just a Coventry issue or just a Connecticut issue. This is a national crisis for our schools. It's incumbent upon us to make sure that our schools have the financial resources to safely educate our children during this pandemic. It's critical that our kids and families feel safe coming to school, and I hope that the entire council will recognize this and support this suggestion.
John Hand?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to express my support for what Lisa Thomas has just put forward. I think that is very prudent given the circumstances that changed since our last vote. I think that's very fair, and I think it sets us up closer for success in the fall.
May I make a comment, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
Matt Senior. So I took all this into consideration, and one of the questions that I had asked the board was that if we restored $50,000, what would they cut out of their current budget to free up the $50,000 to be able to be used for things like you're suggesting that they might be used for? Because maybe you don't appreciate that the proposed budget actually spends that money, and if we put it back in and they don't cut something out of that budget, that money is not available for anything. And that kind of ties into what my proposal is, and I don't know if I can get it out, but I'd like to try, if you guys would want to hear.
Yes, please.
So what I'm proposing is that, and I did check with Amanda and John to see if this is feasible and doable. I want to create a town council fund for COVID educational expenses. So I propose that the town council, and this is not formal language, nor is it a motion. I'm trying to give this for discussion purposes during this, that we already have a motion on the table. I'd like to propose that the town council create a fund and fund it with $99,500 from the council's 1.5% fund during this fiscal year. That would provide funding to the Board of Education. Excuse me, let me read it better here. So the fund would provide funding to the Board of Education to meet extraordinary and unbudgeted expenses incurred during the 2020-2021 school year that cannot be met by the funding in the board's approved budget due to the changes in the way Coventry schools operate and the changing requirements placed on the district by the state in response to the coronavirus outbreak that are needed to provide our students with a quality education to keep them safe. Access to these funds would require council agreement. This would also preserve the council's entire 1.5% for the next fiscal year to better help out the council meet any additional issues or emergencies that may come up during the next year. This would dedicate funds that would be available if the circumstances warranted. This is all a bunch of unknowns right now. Nobody knows what it's going to really look like. We don't know if we're going to be reopening schools. We don't know if we're going to reopen part of the schools. We don't know if we're going to do staggered classes. We don't know if we're going to be changing transportation. But all these things are a real concern, and something that we should at least plan for and make some provision for. So this is a suggestion that is separate from the budget proposal, but I think that it actually answers the need better than what the current, I don't know if that was actually an amendment that was proposed, but the current suggestion would do, and meet the needs of the town in a better way, and also preserve our budgetary issues that we've talked about all along going forward. Next year's budget starting at a different balance. If you build in the saving, the money for the COVID needs going forward, it's going to be in the budget. Whether or not, we don't yet know whether it's going to be needed. What's going to be needed, what it's going to look like, or what those needs will be. This would give a lot of flexibility. So that's my proposal, and I would, I think in conjunction with the budget that's proposed, that this fund, I think would answer the questions that the community and the council has, and the board perhaps, about what things are going to look like and what we could do about it going forward.
Matt, Jr.?
I have a question.
Yep.
Where would that be? New money being allocated? Where would that come from?
General fund. It's general fund money.
So if I may, just to clarify that, the council's 1.5% is an authorization given by the charter that you can go up to $100,000. The council has authorization, hence being slightly under that. And it comes out of fund balance. So some of the money that the board is sending back through would replace those funds that are appropriated this year. So it would end up, funds coming through would be from this fiscal year that you're taking this money out now. So it would not negatively affect the fund balance because it's a pass-through. One's going out, one's going back in, but it's the same fiscal year. So just to understand where it's coming from and what the impact is.
Lisa Thomas?
So it's $100,000 for, we can set up an account specifically for that purpose, and
it becomes designated fund balance. That's basically how it,
okay.
From an accounting standpoint.
But any higher than that, we would need a
town meeting approval. Yeah.
Okay, Lisa Thomas, go ahead, please.
So I have a couple of things. First of all, it's very interesting because one of those letters that we received regarding the budget reads as follows, and it is from Howard Haberern, 80 Cassidy Hill Road. He says...
Where are we reading letter?
This is completely relevant to what was just suggested. He wrote, while nobody, including myself, likes a budget increase, it is inappropriate to not plan better. Also, it's part of this agenda item. It's inappropriate to not plan better for the upcoming challenges that our school board will face and almost certainly incur. Due to the COVID-19 virus, there will be increases in transportation, staffing costs due to smaller class sizes, the need for segregation areas, busing, and etc. I propose, this was written on May 25th, I propose that the council puts the over $300,000 budget cut that they made into an escrow account to pay for these almost guaranteed increases. I'm not going to read the rest of this well-written letter, but it is interesting to me that we had a constituent write in with a similar suggestion, yet this constituent was not going to be heard in the general conversation tonight. So I thank Howard for this suggestion as well. My question is, why would that money just not go into the 1% fund for the Board of Ed? Why are we creating so many hurdles and I won't even call them hurdles, but why are there going to be so many steps for the Board of Ed to do the job it needs to do, which is going to be under incredibly stressful situation? I trust the Board of Ed to take care of our children. I think they should have their budget. They should take care of what they need to do. Our children should be safe. Our staff should be safe. It's going to be hard enough to convince parents to send their children to school or to put them on a bus. We have no idea what kind of accommodations we are going to have to make when this next school year starts. What happens when there are parents who say, I will not send my child into that school building and you must make an accommodation? What are we going to do? And we at this council table, we don't know the answer to that, and it is not up to us to answer it. We are not, most of us are not the professionals to answer that question. I'm wondering, could you go back to what the limit is on how much could be set into a designated fund just for the Board of Ed?
The 1%.
No, I have a question.
Hang
I have
on,
a
Matt.
No, I have a question first, Matt. Thank
Hang on.
you.
The 1% that's set up for the Board of Education is for capital use. So
Okay.
that gets put in there, and if they have a capital expense that comes up unexpectedly, that's what it's intended for. So that's why this is something different.
So things like PPE could come out of that 1%.
I'm
Right?
not
I mean, those are the
terribly
things
sure.
we need to know. There's so
Yes.
many unknowns.
Lisa, they couldn't pay for transportation expenses out of that account. They couldn't pay for any staff. They couldn't pay for millions of things that they might possibly need.
Thank you for
Not
the
a
schooling,
flexible-
Matthew. I was on this council when we established that fund.
So you already knew that.
I know that.
Okay.
And there
I had another
are plenty
question.
of
How
capital
would your
things that are going to
proposal-
need to be paid for.
How would your proposal to put $50,000 back in the budget do that?
It makes the Board of Ed whole with where they needed to be. So if you are willing to make them whole and then you want to also set up another account with 100,000 or whatever in it, that's icing on the cake.
John Hand, did you have your hand up?
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to ask a question. I don't know the answer to this, and hopefully somebody here does. Is this even legal to do this with Board of Education operations money?
It's not called Board of Education Operations money, but yes, it's legal.
Is there anyone else in the room who has an opinion on that?
You can create a fund for
That
anything.
you already thought it was, but
The council
I
can
started out by
create a
saying
fund.
yes, and then it got it was feasible and prudent.
All right,
I can't hear you when you're all talking at once.
Amanda's going to answer. Go on, Amanda, please.
The council,
Thank you.
the council is authorized to create a fund for anything that they want. They can do that for any purpose. Since this fund would not have any outside revenue other than the transfer from the general fund going into it, for financial statement presentation, it'd be included as part of the general fund and show up as committed fund balance. But the council is authorized to create funds and transfer money into them for any purpose they see fit.
Okay, so that explains certainly that side of it. Is there any legal issue with the board on the other side of this?
It's
Or,
one
you know, I don't
budget.
know, but it just seems like a bit of a concern. It's just, there's going to be certain restrictions on what they can use it. Certainly, we will come up with restrictions. It sounds like Matt Senior had some restrictions in mind, but I didn't know. I didn't know if there's a wrinkle there.
Lisa Conan?
I just, Matt Senior, I just wanted to add just a point of clarification.
Sure.
You had mentioned in your initial, when you were throwing this out here for discussion, that you wanted, it would be the use of this fund that the council would have to approve.
Yeah.
Did you say a unanimous vote or
No.
just a vote? Okay. If this were to happen, you know, as Lisa was saying, there's an awful lot of emergencies, I imagine, that are going to arise. would the Board of Ed have to wait until the council convenes again to be able to tap into this money and then, go through the approval process?
I'm not sure what you mean, but what I'm suggesting or at least how I was thinking of it, and this is just the way I thought about it. Once you have a better idea of what's being proposed for schools, like for example, I was listening to their Board of Ed August 30th meeting, and the one proposal I think was to have just the K through 5 do double sessions and everybody else to remain distance learning. So that sets up certain challenges if that's the way they set things up. But it also doesn't necessarily use all the funds that are that are currently in the budget right now, because the other older children wouldn't be going back to school. I'm not saying that's a proposal that's going to come forward. I'm saying that that's one of the things that's that was suggested and discussed at a board meeting. If in fact everyone's going back to school and everyone's doing double sessions and everyone has to be bused and everyone, then obviously those are going to far exceed anything that's in our budget. That would, obviously qualify, in my opinion. I can't give you a what if, because we don't know the answers until there's been, actual concrete proposals put forward by the state and suggestions as to how they have to open and how we're going to service our children. They could be opening the schools but not have sports, so that money would be available for some of the COVID expenses. So you'd like to look at that before you tap into the account. Those are just possible scenarios. But none of them are set in stone, because I don't have any clue as to exactly what's going to be proposed.
Richard?
I'll echo on what everybody's saying. I think that we have no idea. We really don't have an idea of what's going to happen. And the reality is if it exceeds the amount of money that even this fund has, we're going to have to come up with the money.
Right.
This is a unique way to get money from the way I understand it, to get money from this current fiscal year, roll it into next year, knowing that we might have the expenses, but we don't even know if we're going to have those expenses, but we probably will. So we're already a little bit ahead. So it seems very prudent, and it's actually more than the $50,000 that we would give back to the Board of Ed. It's going to be out there, and it just seems like a really neat way to go about getting money to the Board of Ed and doing it in this current year. And I don't really even think it really should me up for, it's just a great idea. And just let's do this, because it's a way for us to help out and help all the students and the teachers and the taxpayers and just move it forward. I mean, it's a good idea. It's unique thinking. It's outside the box thinking for a problem that's going to be way outside any box we ever imagined.
Matt
Chair?
Senior? Yep. Go ahead, Matt Senior.
I just want to, I agree that this may be nothing more than a down payment. We really have no concept or clue as to what the scope of the need may be. And I think that's true for everybody. So, and as I said at the last meeting, that we expect and would hope that the board would come back to us and we'd work together to solve the problem, to make certain that our children are being educated and safe at the same time.
John Hand?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say I'm encouraged by Richard Williams, Councilmember Richard Williams' support for schools. I am somewhat perplexed with his support for this, because it seems like it was just a meeting ago he was railing about playing games and moving money around or something like that, and now it seems like he's very much behind something that's very much that. It's just perplexing, that's all.
Can we speak to the motion and not the people's not characterize people's intentions?
Matt Junior?
If we could do that always.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Matt Junior.
Where was the $50,000 allocated in the budget that?
They didn't identify so I asked that question specifically in the questions that we proposed this week. And basically, They couldn't, what Mr. Trump, they couldn't say where they would eliminate, they didn't say where they would eliminate those funds to make them available for COVID. It was basically like, once we know what's really going to happen, then we'll set new priorities and then we'll redirect funds or something.
So right now, if the 50 is returned, it stays in the current budget.
Yeah, the same proposed budget that was put forward before.
And that couldn't be changed.
The board can do whatever they like. They have complete control over their budget and their funding. I mean, their funds, not their funding.
John Hand? John Hand? Two hands? John, two hands? Go!
Does he know you called?
Three times?
John, you've been recognized to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, I just want to circle back to where we started and what the board communicated to us that they were looking for, given the size of what they were going to give back, if we could go ahead and restore the $50,000. That doesn't preclude us from also starting a fund. That'll give them some little down payment that they actually have control over and can do the things that they need to do to get going now. I understand this stuff doesn't happen overnight. It takes a little planning. It does not preclude us from starting a fund for them. That's a great idea as a way to go ahead and find a way to get them some more money on top of that. I don't think it's A or B. I think they can do A and B.
You need to make an amendment or something, John, so we can.
Okay, thank you. I would like to propose an amendment that we restore the $50,000 and we go ahead and set up the fund that is in the rest of the motion.
So now I ask the maker if they accept that amendment?
No, no. So
that's not
really how it works. But one thing that I'm not sure that this isn't a proposal that can be approved, like and set up the fund tonight. I don't think. I think my thought would be it would go to finance, get hammered out exactly, and then come back at the next meeting. But I'm in favor of committing to doing it, but I don't know that you could put it in a motion to do it. Right now is what I guess I'm saying.
Okay, I went off your suggestion to make an amendment. That's all.
Well, no, amendment to the motion was the budget proposal. And you're doing that, and you're changing it by $50,000 for the board, correct?
Correct.
You're increasing the board.
To restore.
To increase the board's allocation by $50,000.
Yes, to restore the $50,000 that was taken away at the last meeting.
I second that amendment.
All right.
Which also then leaves plenty of money that's being returned by the board to fund this escrow type of account like Mr. Haberin described in his letter of May 25th. Is there a limit to how much could go into that escrow account?
Yes.
And that is what, the 99,000 or 100? Under
It has to be under 100.
99,000.
So, and that's
Maybe we could create 3 of those accounts so that we can even scratch the surface of what's going to be needed.
that would be a violation of the charter.
I'm sure it
So
would.
I'd like to address that if I can.
Go ahead, Matt Senior.
My turn. I don't want to interrupt Lisa. I can't tell when she's talking. I'm sorry, it's hard to hear.
Go ahead, Matt Senior.
Okay. So the funds that you're talking about, the 291,000 in COVID savings, we had been anticipating that it would be somewhere around that number when we started, talking about use of fund balance. The use of fund balance is not going to be a one-time thing. We're going to have to plan and propose to use fund balance in next year's budget as well. We're creating a major hole by continuing to use fund balance and eliminating capital items that need to be carried forward into the following budget year. Just the 310,000 and the 217,000 that the board eliminated in capital items is already created over $500,000 revenue hole in next year's budget. So we're looking at, without knowing what the state may do to our budget next year, And my presumption is that they're not going to be able to sustain, their current level of grants. Is that you're looking at least a half of a mil before you even start talking about any increases next year, and it could be, substantially higher. And that's so. Just because you got that money today doesn't mean that it can be spent tomorrow, and that that everything's okay going forward. I've been trying to help everyone understand that there's a lot of implications during this current year, but also most importantly for next year. The 300,000 or so of COVID savings was more than anticipated. It's actually much more than that. They've been able to, they used the COVID savings for a number of other spending items that they've put forward, and appropriately, there's nothing wrong with that. But all those savings were from COVID savings that they. So I think that money, that's just money that shouldn't have been able to be available. They should have still been having school, but should have been spent, but it wasn't. So it should be returned to the taxpayers. That's number one. Number two, they're out of the 150,000 that came from their operating budget. Part of that actually was also from COVID savings. They were able to use some of the additional COVID savings to pull back some of the items from next year's budget into this year's budget. All appropriate. This is what we were talking about all along. But to think, and Lisa, you asked me the question last time we met. If they find this additional COVID savings, can we use that? And I rightly, I believe, said that would be like double counting, because we're counting on that money already to do what we're doing to maintain our fund balance, to support the town and schools in the coming continuation of this crisis, but also in next year's budget. So that's my opinion. I think that the proposal that we have on the table is a good one, in association with the other account, the other fund that we would set up. I would be opposed to the amendment.
Matt Senior, I want to say that I am in favor of the motion that you put forward. I think the Board of Ed.
I think the amendment's on the table right now, right?
Right, but I'm just sharing my thoughts right now. And I appreciate that the Board of Ed has worked with us, that they've answered our questions. And I think the fact that we're talking about establishing this fund should give them some assurance that we are here to work with them. It's, in my mind, I look at it as one budget for the town of Coventry. A portion of it is for Public Works, a large portion is for the Board of Ed, but this represents everybody in town. It's one budget that we're going to be approving. So anybody else have anything they want to add at this time?
I just wanted to add that I support John's amendment.
Thank you.
We're going to vote on it in a second.
Yep. If John Hand?
Julie asked and I answered, excuse me.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Earlier, Matt Senior, I think you mentioned that you had this figure in your head when we were taking a vote about how much the COVID savings was going to be, that you knew it was going to be somewhere around 300,000 or something. Did I hear that correctly?
No. I can expound if you like. Actually, I think that I might have misunderstood some of the reports that we got from the board, because I thought that there were additional regular savings, non-COVID savings, that they were putting forward as well in conjunction with the 158, and that to me was right around 300,000. So I was already thinking that the 300,000 would have flowed back to the general fund when we made the last proposal. That's what I said.
Okay. So when you roll it all up, what's coming back to the town is on the order of $741,000, correct?
No. Elimination from a budget isn't rolling back to the town. Is that what you're suggesting?
I guess give back and returns of funds.
So the money going to the general fund is $291,000.
That's the COVID-19 savings. That's correct?
Those are the only monies going into the general fund from the Board of Ed.
Oh, what about the land rack money?
So what does that mean? Are you talking about general fund, or are you talking about something else?
Well, I thought that they gave $83,000 for something in.
They reduced the budget by $83,000, the capital budget by $83,000.
Reducing the budget isn't rolling money back to the town. I'm not sure if that, unless that's what you think you're characterizing it as. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I guess what I'm characterizing it as is the grand total of all the ways that we are, I say we, the Board of Ed in this case has contributed to this year and the coming year. And I don't think I'm the only person grouping that number together to come up there. I heard it referenced in at least one letter that was sent in for these budget discussions.
The total is $741,668.93.
Oh, thank you. That matches pretty closely to what I said before, and you said no. Okay, thank you.
A quick question, before we leap ahead with something that we have this proposal that we just are hearing now tonight for the first time.
I don't think we're leaving
Maybe
that.
this question is for John Elsecker, but would it be worth running this by council? Legal counsel, just to make sure that this is something that is something we can do, because, you know, I haven't had a chance to, you know, really digest the details here, but, you know, it seems to me that setting up a fund that, you know, and I'm not sure if it's going to be used for operating money, that just doesn't seem like that would be possible.
Yeah, so Lisa, it's
Yeah.
really no different than, well, we've done similar things when we set money aside for wall projects for the schools, but you know, we wouldn't run it through our town attorney because it's a budget issue. It's really maybe our auditors, but you know, Amanda was an auditor and it's a CPA. So, and in my experience, I feel very comfortable that we have the right to designate a portion of our fund balance towards this.
If it has a specific purpose, you're fine. If you were just saying we're creating a Board of Ed operational fund, I think I would be more apt to want legal advice. But if you're specifically setting up money for COVID-19 issues and it has a specific purpose, I have no concerns about that.
And if, just quickly, I know even the town of South Windsor set up something called the Budget Stabilization Fund, where they put money in. If they have a good year, they put money in so that they could offset a bad year. So you can do several designations against your fund balance for specific purposes.
Lisa Thomas?
So if you say that the fund is set up for COVID expenses related to education, to our schools, is there some standard, some test you have to meet anytime you're going to spend money out of it?
That would be a council decision as they set up the fund.
So the council makes the decision about what's a COVID expense?
To set up the parameters. I think that's why Matthew Sr. is talking about not acting on this tonight, but having the finance committee define that, just like we define the 1% fund. You recall those discussions. There's lots of latitudes, and our town actually has both a looseness and a tightness. The tightness is that it's really for capital or emergencies. The looseness is kind of if it's already in our capital improvement plan, it gets favorable in the future. It gets favorable treatment. So every town has a little kind of, you set that policy up, and I think, and I'm speaking for him, so correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's
You're correct, John. No, you're correct.
I think that's why he wanted to work through finance committee to come back with the wording of how to set up this designation and what the uses are, and how it's going to be treated, and what type of timeframes and all those issues.
Yes.
So we'll have the next week to think about these before it gets to finance, and then from finance back to the next council, you'll have a whole nother week to digest or process or ask questions.
I would like to know that there's a very firm commitment on the part of each member of this council to set this up, because I don't want to vote on a budget tonight and then 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now have any member of this council turn around and say they're not going to support this fund.
I'm committed to
I'm not
supporting
On the fund, but with no details?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Matt Senior.
there's an amendment on the floor. I don't know how we can keep talking about everything else except the amendment. I think we need to put that aside first or pass it, one or the other.
All right, so the amendment was
It could be
made.
tabled while we continue.
That would be a motion. Someone make a motion, that's fine.
We can vote on the amendment. That was made by John Hand. Can you reiterate it, John, quickly? Just,
Sure. Basically, per the letter that was sent to the council from the superintendent, I think all the details are in there. It is to restore the $50,000 cut in light of the increased amount of the COVID-19 savings that they are returning to us.
and that
That passed
was,
muster.
okay, seconded by Lisa Thomas, correct? All right,
So I think the motion is to increase the proposed appropriation to the Board of Education to $27,916,548. Is that correct, Amanda?
Correct.
Yes.
okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt Senior.
Sure.
All right, all those in, I'm sorry, Yvonne, can you say that again?
What's the number?
$27,916,548.
You're welcome. All right, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
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 That's Lisa Thomas, Lisa Conant, and John Hand. All those opposed, please say nay. Nay.
Okay.
That's Matt Senior, Richard, Matt Junior, and Julie Blanchard opposed. Motion for amendment fails.
So we're back to the original motion.
We are.
Now, Lisa, I don't mind if you want to talk about the fund now, if you'd like to, before we go to the final decision making.
Lisa had asked a question as to which council members are in favor of this new fund that we're proposing. I am. I think it's a great idea. I think it will give the Board of Education some assurance that we're here to work with them to support the whole town in any unexpected COVID-related school opening expenses that are going to come up.
On another note, just so that everyone is clear, also, there's other funds that are available too, that besides the board's budget, to help in this endeavor. They're from the CARES Act, if I'm correct, they're receiving $111,000, which can be used towards a lot of these same kinds of issues. They're asking to increase their 1% account, which Lisa was commenting about, by another $100,000. And after they do that, then they would have over $240,000 in that account. They also have the tuition account, which is undesignated funds, can be used for any purpose that the board chooses without any outside influence. And that's $148,000 at the end of this year projected according to the board. So all those funds are available. There are contingencies there that can be used for emergency circumstances or unusual circumstances. So I don't want people to think that it's only $100,000 because it's in conjunction with everything else and a commitment that if it's more is needed, that they should come back to the council.
Thank you. Lisa Thomas?
In light of the defeat of the amendment to restore the $50,000, I would support the fund.
Is there anyone else that would like to share their support of establishing this fund?
I would support the fund. I think the Board of Education would appreciate it. And I think it is a good step to plan ahead as best we can.
Well, and preserve our fund balance for the next fiscal year at the same time. So
Correct.
that's important. I try to put all the little pieces together, and this is, I think a reasonable assimilation of all that, and I think it goes in the right direction. I think it's a good positive effort.
It sounds like you've collected all the facts and it's well thought out.
John Hand?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess if we're all so supportive of the board, and I hope that we are, I guess I don't understand why we can't give them the 50 and make a $49,000 fund.
Doesn't accomplish what we're trying to give them the funds for and the stated purpose for the return of the 50, it sounds like, which would be for COVID and not just to be returned to the budget as it sits. Doesn't make any sense.
You're saying, you're opining that this money won't go towards COVID?
No, it would stay under the line item in the budget that it's allocated for.
For example, if I may, if they do, because remember they opened discussions with their bargaining units. If in fact they had reduced or agreed to reduce the proposed placeholders for their increases in those budgets, then that money would then be available. But if they don't do that, then that money is going to be spent on those salaries. That's an example. So that money would not be available then, in my opinion, to be used for some unknown COVID expense in the near future.
So this is a way we can ensure that it is available, right?
Just an example. There's, you can come up with $1 million.
Well, that's a what if scenario, I guess. I guess we could put out possible scenarios all night.
Well, John, do you support the fund or not?
I propose at making the fund and restoring the thing. So yes, I support the creation of a fund, Richard. Yes.
Right. So what's on
I
the
guess I
table?
just don't understand why everybody else here is voting against giving them the restoring the $50,000. They ended up handing us $133,000 more than the last time we voted.
Because the 50 wouldn't go to COVID necessarily.
Can I ask a question?
I guess I support the board knowing what to do with their money to do the best thing. Those people were elected to take care of the school system and our kids. They work hard at doing it. They're achieving success with what they have, which we spend low, they achieve high. I guess I have faith in them to continue doing the fantastic job they're doing.
John L. Sesser?
Yes.
Do I need to make part of the motion, you had made the suggestion at one point, it wasn't tonight, does it need to be part of the motion that we would also plan to use fund balance for next year's budget? Is that separate from the motion, or is that part of the motion? I wanted to incorporate it, but I didn't know if it had to be part of the actual motion, or...
No, if I set it in mill rate, you're plugging in the amount that has to come out of fund balance, because we've already set the tax collection amount.
No, I'm talking about, you had said for Moody's and others, it might be important to show that we're doing a multi-year approach.
Yes, and in discussion, you mentioned that already, that it's likely that we're going to have to continue to use fund balance next year, because we're using a lot this year, which may get restored, but because the spending has increased, you already talked about having almost a $500,000 increase before any state budget reductions,
Right.
Which is a combination.
I just didn't know if I need to incorporate it in my motion.
No, I think we can. We can talk about it further at finance if we want to make a statement, a policy statement at the next council meeting. But it doesn't need to be done as part of the budget. It's more, as we did discuss, a statement for Moody's that this is a planned approach to fund balance management.
Okay. Thank you. I was trying to cover all my bases there. So thank you very much.
So Lisa Thomas, do you feel comfortable moving forward with people's answers?
Did Richard answer?
Yeah. Well, Richard spoke earlier about supporting the fund. Richard, you're in favor of setting up this fund?
Oh, I am. I think it's a neat idea. I think it's accountable. I think it's a bucket of money, as Mr. Hann has alluded to before, that I sometimes don't like to see things moved around. This is a designated fund for a designated purpose, and we know that more than likely it's going to be a lot more than this, and it's a lot of unknowns, but at least we're trying to plug a hole.
Thank you. Yes,
and
Lisa
I think
Thomas.
I think it's a prudent thing to do, and I support it 100%.
Thank you.
So each of us has agreed that we will support creating this fund and funding it with the most possible, which is $99,900.
I think we said 99.5.
5 was suggested.
That's what he said, but you could go higher.
We could go to 99,900.
99.
Yeah, we could do 99,999. I really think we need to have as much in there as we can.
Lisa, we'll do all the fine points at finance next week. You can bring that up again.
Just don't come back and say we're funding this fund with $30,000, because that's not what I'm agreeing to. I'm agreeing to a fund that's funded with as much as possible, and I still, while I appreciate what appears to be the spirit behind it, I don't appreciate the micromanagement of the Board of Education. But as much commitment as I can get to that fund with as many dollars in it as possible, I'm there for you.
I don't see how it's micromanagement, because we could do things.
All right, are we good with our
Can we
discussion?
vote on the motion?
Yeah, that'd be my pleasure. All those in favor of approving Matt Senior's motion for a budget, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I have a question. I'm voting yes, but it's not defined as to what the hurdles will be for the board to get this money from this fund.
That's up.
We didn't vote on the phone.
We didn't vote on that, John. You're voting on the budget.
Budget now?
That'll come up at our next meeting, John?
Yeah, I understand you tabled it to finance.
No, we didn't table it.
It's been referred to finance to bring back to the council.
This fund.
Preferred.
But we are voting on a budget motion.
This is to set the final budget for the town of Coventry?
Correct.
Yes, I'm familiar with the concept.
Okay, so again, everybody in favor, please say aye. Aye.
I'm voting yes based on a commitment to that fund.
Matt Jr. and Lisa Conant.
Aye.
I also vote yes based on a commitment to fund, establish that fund to the fullest extent possible.
Okay, so I see that as a unanimous
If you guys wanted to
vote.
go to town meeting, you could put $1 million in there, but this is the extent we can without going to town meeting.
I understand. I just want to make it very clear that as to Lisa's point, at a future time, all of a sudden, whoops, it's down to 25K. So I just want to.
That's so disingenuous. I mean, that's so disingenuous.
Thing. I just
That's
think
insulting.
Excuse me.
Hold on.
Excuse me.
That's low politics.
It is not low politics.
It's low. Come on. We're the one who came up with the idea. And
Madam Chair,
okay?
order.
Okay, Lisa Conant, go ahead.
I believe, Richard, I have the floor once again, and you've made excuse me.
All right, Richard, let her
You've made
finish.
some civil remarks, and
Yeah,
you have been interrupting.
I will.
If I can continue, I just want to make it clear that, in my estimation, I don't want things changed later on. That's all.
And
I'm not talking. I am talking to the group. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you, Pete. Thank you. And I don't think that we would change anything. We came up with a commitment to fund it, seeing the problem, and everybody wants to make an issue out of it for some reason, and it's BS.
John Hand?
Madam Chair, if I
Yes.
may, John Hand would just like to say, it's not like people are pulling this without precedent, pulling this out of thin air. It's not like we haven't seen numbers been offered and then changed recently with the board. Just saying.
That's all in your mind, John, but that's okay.
I don't think it's the time.
Guys,
Let's
let's
just have
move
a show of
on.
hands that everyone who would support the 99,999. Let's just have a show of hands. I would support it.
Yep.
So we're missing a couple of
I hope
hands
that
there.
it is discussed in finance and it goes through.
All right. Next item on
You got to
our
set the mill rate.
agenda.
Before you move on, there's another adapter that sets the mill rate.
That's what I'm looking. All right, next is to set the mill rate.
Ben, is it 31.17?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is that correct? I just want to.
Do this anymore. Like, Julie Blanchard is the chair of this town council. She is entitled to run these meetings without being interrupted, and she's quite competent. So let's give her the opportunity, which will also help Yvonne, take minutes.
Thank you. All right, so the mill rate is proposed to be 31.17. Can I get a motion to set that mill rate for the next budget year?
Matt Senior.
Matt Senior, so moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, John Hand. I don't assume we need any further discussion on that item. All those in favor of approving the mill rate at 31.17, please say aye. Aye.
One comment, Madam Chair.
Yes, Matt Senior?
That does require the allocation of $310,000 in fund balance, just so everyone's clear on that.
Thank you.
And the modified collection rate.
Right.
And a modified collection rate of 98%.
And then, John, there's a dot for a link.
That was actually
Comments,
just all the
which-
comments, which will be attached to the
Can I
minutes.
make one more comment, Madam Chair? I'm sorry.
Yes, Matt Senior.
So I'm very disappointed in the state of Connecticut that the governor would not allow us to, try to come up with a creative way to have a referendum and keep people safe at the same time. I do think it's very important for people to have a say in how the government is operating and the decisions that we're making. And if we could have found any feasible way to do it, we would have done it. The governor actually seemed to leave a little light under the door, and we were trying to investigate and move forward, and then he pulled the rug out from under us and basically cut off all avenues of any hope and out at all. So he left us with no choice but to do what we're doing. We understand why people are disappointed. We're disappointed too. It's not something that we prefer, we request, or would even hope to do or want to do. This is being forced upon us, and I think that we're doing a pretty good job under very difficult circumstances as a group. We've come to unanimous decisions all the way through this process, and hopefully the town can find some comfort in that as well.
Agreed. Thank you. Lisa Thomas?
I just want to say, I am not intending to beat up our governor on making very difficult decisions. There are actually towns in this state that don't even hold a referendum, and their board of directors or whatever are held accountable for how they decide to set a budget. And so we are held accountable this year for what we decide to do with our budget. And we've tried to make every possible avenue open to our voters and our residents to express an opinion, which is one of the reasons why some of us were concerned tonight when there are letters that were not read aloud for the general public to hear at this meeting, which is the meeting where we are deciding on this budget. I think it's beating a dead horse to go after the leadership of our state doing the best they can in an unprecedented time, just like we're doing the best we can around this council table. And there are a lot of constitutional issues surrounding things that were done, for instance, in the town of Vernon. There were people who could not participate in that vote because of the way it was held. So we need to be very careful about what we're saying in public and the safety of our voters.
I reiterate everything I said, but thank you very much for your comments, Lisa.
Thank you very much for yours as well, Matt, as always.
Did anybody else have something to say? Matt Jr.?
Say that I'm very uncomfortable with the council having to make a unilateral decision on the budget that is paid for by the citizens of Coventry that may have no say in setting the budget amount. I think I, along with other members of the council, have looked at many different legal possibilities to determine how we could get around the governor's executive order. I think that towns all around the state are being forced into doing what we just did. It goes against everything that I personally believe in, where the people should have the voice and the ability to decide how they're governed. And, no matter what I think about the budget, I think that every person who is a taxpayer, a citizen of town, should have had the right to vote. I think we really need to look at, or should have looked at, don't we have a duty to ignore unconstitutional executive orders? I believe that the governor's executive order in this case is completely legal. I think it's authorized by the legislature. But whether or not it violates the Constitution or the Charter, I don't know that it would hold up in the courts.
John Hand?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to first state that I strongly support the right of our citizens to vote on the budget. I wish we could have done it. Circumstances beyond any of our control have dictated otherwise. And this is what we have this year. That being said, I find it very perplexing that there are those at this table saying they have such a big problem with it when 3 short years ago, they also passed a budget without the vote of the citizens and set a mill rate based on that.
No, we didn't.
So I just think a little historical context is in order. You don't believe me? You don't remember the 0.8 mil increase?
It was voted on at a referendum, John.
Oh, okay. So you set the mill rate there was no citizen vote on that. That's all. I'm just saying it's interesting. I'm glad to hear that you're very supportive of the folks' right to vote, and I hope that we can always do it in the future. So we can agree on that.
All right, so once again, I'm going to remind the people watching or listening that they will be able to see all of the letters that were submitted under budget comments. They will be attached to the minutes of the June 1st, 2020 meeting that we all received in our inboxes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
If I may, I just want to also remind that the majority of those letters were attached, were a live link on this agenda too, so anyone that clicked on the agenda could read all of those as an active link. So it stays active and they're in our document center. So anyone that wants to do it, just like we actually, as is pointed out, we have more people participating in this than we've ever had at the budget hearing.
I agree.
But not at a vote. There's a difference, I understand. But the hearing part, we have had more input.
Okay. Everybody ready for me to move on to our next item?
Did we vote on the mill rate?
Yes, we did. I swear we did.
I don't know.
Yvonne, did you record the voting of the mill rate?
I have 31,417.
Yes.
So you by figure, second, and by hand, and all those in favor.
Thank you. Just want to check.
We did.
Because usually you have discussion before the vote.
All right, our next item is not ready for action, not ready for action, not ready for action.
Just a little bit slower.
That's a good try.
Long-term recovery coordinator, I just want to say the state is still having discussions on the roles of towns versus regional government. So Eric Trott is our appointed coordinator for our town in terms of if people need contact right now. The Veterans Memorial, at some point when we can have a public hearing and we may want to discuss having a Zoom public hearing, either we could wait till July if you want, just to see how things go, but at some point it'd be nice to get that committee somewhat moving again, so we could have a Zoom public hearing for that before a regular council meeting, partly because they just don't have a quorum. And we have some events coming up, like the Veterans, well, theoretically coming up, the Veterans Memorial Day race. So then 70.
Okay.
So had a long talk with Todd Penny, our town engineer, on the 2 proposals we got in, which were, as I mentioned in the background memo, very different in scope and pricing. And my recommendation to you is to set a sum which would come from CNREF of not to exceed $90,000 for engineering services for the South Street sidewalk lots of program.
I didn't hear John's proposal. I'm sorry, there was other noises.
Okay. A sum not to exceed $90,000 from CNREF for the South Street lots.
Oh, for the engineering?
For the engineering. Just a reminder that the project is like $1.3 million. So typical engineering expenses would normally be 10 to 15%. So this is below that amount. And there's some complications in that this is a scenic road under our scenic road ordinance. So they're going to have to bring in some historical consultants to look at the impact of that design and make sure it's appropriate for that section of South Street from the roundabout to the homestead.
Move to appropriate an amount up to $90,000 for the engineering for services for the South Street lots project.
I second.
Lisa Conan, thank you. Matt Senior, do you want to speak on your motion?
Yeah, I support it.
Thank you. All right, Lisa Thomas?
I'm just curious why you think the $90,000 is enough if this is a unique project and it's lower than would be typical.
Well, as I said, we had disparate pricing. We had one bid that was at $69,000 from VHB Engineering, and BL Company, the company we'll likely hire, came in at $107,000, and they had some aspects of work that we wanted to remove because they were designing some features that beyond what we were asking for them in the scope. And they actually had included some survey work that we already have done. So we don't have a final price per proposal. We believe we'll be able to get it below $90,000. But if the Planning and Zoning Commission has to have a hearing on the scenic road, and they may ask for some additional work, so we want to leave in a couple $1,000s if they need something more than we think they need. So I'm expecting that this will really come out more at 85-ish. And gives us a little room for change orders in case we need for the scenic road perspective. So I'm hoping, I feel comfortable that 90,000 should cover. And so does Tom Penny.
Thanks.
No other questions about this? All those in favor of the motion to approve a sum not to exceed $90,000 from our CNREF fund, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous, Yvonne. Okay, under new business, item 8A, 19/20-75, consideration and possible action, review of Neighborhood Assistance Act proposal and call to public hearing.
So a couple of meetings ago, we had a discussion about CLCC and their interest in this program. They came back with some more details on it to put it towards constructing the greenhouse that was out front and the parking area for the greenhouse that was part of their master plan. So it'll be a sales shopping greenhouse right on Route 44. And we would need to call a public hearing for the next meeting, June 15th. It has to be done before the end of June. There'd be probably a Zoom presentation by them on this, and then open it up for public comment. So probably about half an hour or so before the meeting. So we'll start at 7 o'clock on June 15th, if you agree to authorize the town to call a public hearing.
And now, at this time, you think the governor will have relaxed it enough that we could have 10 people present in this room? Do you know?
It already is.
I'm unclear on some of it.
I've specifically asked that question. If you read it, it's for social interactions.
In your house.
I have specifically asked about meetings, public meetings. and I've gotten the, I don't think so, but I'll check. But I haven't got a definitive yay or nay. So I wouldn't count on it for June 15th. I think some of those are more the June 20th date. But what was done on Friday night without any notice to towns was much more a outdoors and private families than public. But it's not really defined clearly yet. So we're waiting for some guidance documents. So it's possible that we'll know later this week. But I would say we'd still want to do a Zoom anyway. Even
Yeah,
for
so
that. People may not want to come publicly.
All right, so first you need for this council to make a motion to hold a Zoom public hearing, or first
Just
you
say a
need
public hearing per,
today's standards?
yeah, per the required state standards.
Okay,
So if they change.
So moved.
thank you, John Hand.
And that's for 7 o'clock on the
Second.
7 o'clock on June 15th.
Thank you, Matt Jr., for your second. Any questions about this at this time? All right, everybody who's in favor of a June 15th, 2020 public hearing at 7 p.m. for the Neighborhood Assistance Act, please say aye.
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 Thank you, that's unanimous, Yvonne. And that takes care of it, John, we're just
Yep, we'll
calling
get
for
that
a
notice
public
out.
hearing. All right, and the last item on our agenda tonight was a response to a letter. I wrote the response. It was a letter from the state library regarding our budget decisions. And it seems like most everybody wanted it removed. Now, if I can find it. John Hand, you asked to have it removed. Do you want to speak first?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. When I read the original letter from Lisa, the president of the Connecticut Library Association, and then your response that you crafted to her, I was a little bit taken aback, because your letter seems to indicate that it was never discussed about cutting a whole bunch from the library. Now, if you reference the minutes from May 15th, which did we approve those? We've tabled some, we've approved some. But if you take a look in there, there's a big long discussion. We even had some commentary about correcting some of that. From the 15th, there's a big long discussion, and I think Councilman Williams had plenty of things to say about some pretty substantial cuts to that. So I guess it just seemed a bit disingenuous. The tone of the letter that you sent seems to indicate that, oh no, we never would have said anything, but it was in the discussion, clearly. That's all. It's just those are general impressions. I don't think Councilman Williams would disagree that the things that he said. I assume that you still feel the same way today that you felt then. And then trying to square that with the response that was sent to her, it just doesn't seem to match the reality of the meetings I was at. That's all.
We as a council did not entertain Richard's opinions. Matt Sr.?
Yeah, so I was running that part of the meeting, and a couple things. First of all, there was never a proposal made. There was certainly no discussion of 20% of the budget being reduced. There was some, I think, information that came out that was, at times pretty agitated, but I thought I brought it back to, well, this has nothing to do with our current budget discussions, and that we need to move this back to where we're going. We can gather more information and we can talk about it, but there certainly was never, ever anything like a proposal to cut the budget for the library. And that's just not true. Just because one member says a comment doesn't mean that the council is considering a proposal to reduce the budget by 20%, and that's just nonsense.
Well, I agree that it was nonsense, but I guess what I'm saying is it certainly was discussed, even if there wasn't a proposal. And so that's a little bit semantics. You can understand why your organization that supports libraries might have responded this way and bothered to send us a letter. I think was because of the discussion that happened.
Or some prompting by someone that told people that they were going to cut it by 20%.
I don't have that information. All I have is the minutes that we just went through, and I can read from them if you like.
We didn't go
Here,
through it. We tabled it.
Right, well, so we can just say they're unapproved, right?
I believe we approved those and tabled the May 18th ones. I don't table.
Oh, here you go.
Okay. But it seems like, you know, that this was the comment that Mr. Williams clarified for me. Williams feels that, and I think he amended it, operation, plural, needs to be reduced, and he stated that regardless, the amount of money spent on the library should be reduced. There's a staggering amount of employees. Williams proposes we reduce the budget. He sees a lot of labor. Williams restated some of the labor needs to be reduced. Williams continued, there are too many employees. They run 240 hours of payroll hours, and the library is open for 43 hours per week. For the size of the building, it is overstaffed, in his opinion. That is the place to reduce costs. So that's the nature of the comments that I'm reading out of the minutes.
Well,
So
Johnny,
where is their proposal to reduce the board's budget by anything? Never mind 20%. Where is that proposal?
I think it was assumed.
I think I already agreed, Matt, that there was no proposal. I don't think that it rose to the level of proposal, but that it was part of the discussion.
Okay, good.
all right,
I think
John,
that's the nature of
John
where
Hand.
why we got sent a letter.
John, we passed this budget on May 18th, and they send a letter the next day. So, I mean, right there was no need for her letter or the tone of her letter. So,
I can't speak to that. I guess I'm just trying to explain how it seems like, you know, if you had been just an observer to that meeting and been in their position, I could understand why somebody might write a letter. But then it was the response that I was like, oh, like pretending that the discussion didn't happen is the general tone of it. Now, I understand if you drill down to the semantics of the words used, you're right. There was no specific proposal of 20% cut. I can agree with that statement, but the discussion certainly happened, and it was discussed. There was discussion.
Matt Senior?
You're right. There was discussion. I brought it up. And I stand by every word I said.
I figured you might.
I would, but there was no discussion of 20%, or I don't even think there was an amount.
I don't have that amount. I don't know.
But
That's all.
the point
Matt
is,
Senior.
here you go again, bringing something up, trying to make some pay out of it, and it was my opinion, just like you have your opinion, and not everything you say is the golden rule or the way things are going to fly, and how it goes, man. You know?
John and Richard, Matt Senior had his hand up, and I recognized him. Go ahead, Matt.
Matt Senior is muted. Rarely you're muted. Okay. Can you hear us?
Here you
Yes.
go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. You've been missing all my great comments? Holy cow.
Whole thing, yep.
So I wanted to just bring up the discussion of the letter, which is why I asked for the letter to be taken out. A lot of information came out that I was not aware of, and a lot of comments were made by people related to the board library about the structure of their investments, our contract, and the restrictions that they may have on spending and so forth. But then the 990s that were also brought forward, which I don't know if everyone finally got. I know that they didn't get them at the table before the meeting. Some people, even though it was tried to be sent to you. That just raised some questions, and I think I'm proposing that we look into get a better understanding of the relationship and the resources, relationship between the town and the library and the resources and their use by the library, and how in years when perhaps our grant exceeds their expenses, even though they're supposed to be contributing some monies towards the operation of the library, that all those monies go back into their fund balance. Maybe we could think about having created a repair and maintenance fund or something where those kinds of funds might go into, so that it'd be available to help assist the operation of the library going forward, especially if they have restrictions on the use of their funds. So I'd like to look into that a little bit more and get better information and understand the nuances of the contracts and the codicils and the commitments of the town.
Well, why don't we
Excuse me, Madam
refer
Chair?
that to finance for your next meeting? Yes, John Hand.
Well, I appreciate any any comments by other council members. This item on our agenda was the letter and your response, and now he's off in this other aspect of it. It just seems a little bit further than what was on our agenda. And I'm not, it will be talked about, but I don't know if right now on this meeting, on this agenda that was posted, I don't think it went beyond the letter we received and your response to it.
But I think that the library is very timely, and I want to refer it to finance so we can be prepared, because they're ready to come to us with a proposal for the building project that they want to propose. They've made their changes, so now we need to schedule to get them to a future meeting.
No, I fully agree but then again, that'll be an agenda item on another meeting agenda. I just thought that Matt Senior's comments there were going a little bit beyond that, and especially given the nature of how strictly we were to adhere to budget items, to items on our agenda this evening. It seems like we were having a very strict interpretation this evening about what is allowed to be talked about. I guess I just saw this wandering beyond what's on the agenda for this item for tonight. I look forward to a future discussion in another meeting.
Okay. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn, Madam Chair.
Second.
Thank you, John Hand.
That was Matt Senior, Yvonne.
John Hand. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Unanimous. Thank you, everybody.